A fierce battle is raging on the battlefield, with warriors fighting for their clan. My father always said that one should live for the sake of the clan and put aside personal desires. My destiny is to be in my brother's shadow, an integral part of his life and competitions. The young man knelt in the middle of the devastated land, littered with the debris of battle. Smoke rose behind him, testifying to the recent fierce battles. The man approaches the young man across the cracked ground, stops, looks at him, and says with a smile on his lips, "What a sight." The young man slowly raises his head, blood flowing from his mouth and forehead, indicating a recent battle. The lone knight bravely faces numerous enemies, setting an example of invincibility for others. The other knights look at him with respect, feeling the depth of his struggle. Despite the defeat, the hero remains on his knees, surrounded by soldiers. The commander in light armor taunts him, hinting that he expected no less from his brother and his men. The boy looks at the commander with hatred in his eyes and says the name Boris loudly, which can be heard around him. Boris laughs as he looks at Cyan Vert, a great warrior who now lies defeated in front of him. Despite the circumstances, the boy was unwavering, and with a challenge in his eyes, he asked Boris about his motives. He gathered a red demonic vortex around himself, preparing for the next battle. Leaning on one leg, he held up a sword blazing with red fire. With a determined voice, he demanded to know who organized the plot against him and challenged him to a fight, suspecting treachery on the part of the emperor. Boris, protecting his face with his hand, watches the boy and sees a black mist coming from him, proving the rumors about him as a villain. This makes him realize that the young man's power is real and not a myth. As he watches the young man exude demonic energy as he tears through the air, he calls him the Mist Killer, uttering the words with a weight that seems to mark this event in history. The foreman stood with energy and challenge. "Go ahead. If you can talk when I'm done with you, and if you still have teeth, I'll be grateful." Boris confidently notes that the young warrior's attempts to use the secret power are hopeless, because the magic barrier of the 9th rank has been set, which indicates readiness for all challenges. Realizing that the odds are not in his favor, our hero ponders his inability to resist for long. He tries to find a way to escape so that he and his brother can expose the conspirators in the city. The young man raised his sword with determination, his eyes flashing with fighting fire, ready to overcome any obstacle. He gathered all his strength and will to break the barrier in his way. Suddenly, a father in knight's armor appeared on the stage and confidently said to his son, "That's enough." This event becomes the key and changes the further development of the situation. The surprised Ninotsk boy is amazed by the turn of events. Time seems to have stood still for him. He remembers his father's words, which now seem to have a new meaning. The true meaning of the clan is to live for the sake of the clan and your brother. He looks at the man's face, the embodiment of confidence and wisdom, as he remembers his father's words. Shellworth's success means Fianworth's success, which took on a new meaning at that moment. The young man was puzzled and frightened by the unforeseen circumstances, and could not imagine what Ashel's actions were behind them. The surprise and unexpectedness confused him. A majestic warrior in impressive armor with a sword in his hand walks through the devastated lands, and the people around him bow their heads in respect of his power and authority. The boy, unable to bear the brutal truth, falls to his knees and throws his sword to the ground, symbolizing his despair and realization of the inevitability of events. Shell approached the boy and said calmly, "I see you didn't expect to meet me here," emphasizing the unexpectedness of his presence and the difficulty of the circumstances in which the young man found himself. On his knees, the young man looked up at his beloved, his eyes sparkling with fiery energy, revealing the storm of emotions in his heart. With tears in his eyes, he asks his beloved, "What does it all mean? Why was this done?" He shows confusion and a desire to understand the reasons for the drama. His father tells Cyan, "You will do your best for the clan, the people, and me," expressing his confidence in him. Our hero is confused and does not understand what he has done wrong to cause such a reaction. His father's energy makes Cyan think about the deeper meaning of his words. Confused, he asks his father why he made a mistake. His inner resistance grows and his energy of inspiration increases. The father, watching his son, is shocked that he does not recognize his guilt. This indicates a serious conflict and misunderstanding between them. With pain in his heart, the father says to his son, who radiates an aura of death, "You are just a dark mist, a murderer. You are no longer human." His words, full of bitterness and disappointment, echo in the air. The father accuses his son of having deceived him for a long time and of not understanding his sins, trying to see recognition in his eyes. The bloodied boy asks with pain in his voice if he is a murderer and what his sins are. Overwhelmed with emotion, he cannot understand the justice of the accusations. Suddenly angry, Cyan shouts back, "What nonsense are you talking about?" His exclamation broke the silence between them. The young man becomes an important figure in the consolidation of his father's power in the empire. He played a key role in the fight against the Demon King's army, which posed a great threat. He was a central figure in a bloody and brutal war that spanned every continent. He dedicated his life to serving his parents, always supporting them in all their endeavors. He lowered his hand to the ground with a flaming dagger, ready to act and defend himself. He says with pain and betrayal in his voice, "So you are leaving me?" His bitterness and frustration at the injustice is unbridled. Full of energy, he pervades his existence with this power and shouts in anger, "I've been working like a dog all these 20 years. He prepares for the attack and promises not to give up. He runs, leaving a bloody trail, but does not lose his determination to fight to the end. "Let everything break," he says, surrounded by light and fire. "I'll give it my all," he promises with burning eyes as he prepares for one last determined effort. His words are like an oath, sounding as red demonic energy, driving everyone in the path crazy, fills the space around him. The father watches the situation calmly, the frightened knights behind him. He is surprised and worried by the superhuman amount of mana in his son. Cyan vehemently denies it and turns to his brother. "Have you no shame? Do you want to kill me, your younger brother, out of fear?" He expresses his disdain and indignation at his brother's actions. The brother watches Cyan intently, sensing the growing tension between them. Cyan engages in a fight with his brother with great energy, determined to fight to the death. Describes his lone battle against a large army. Like the wind, he moves decisively and energetically in the battle. He stands alone in the epicenter of the storm, radiating energy, restless like a wind demon, not giving up easily. He is confident that he can put an end to this futility. Cyan is on the defensive, looking around to parry the attack. Cyan, the dark mist demon, gathers all his strength to resist the unexpected betrayal. Determined and powerful, he is ready for the final battle. Like a trapped beast, Cyan makes every effort to resist his brother, striving to end the battle with a critical strike saturated with mist energy and demonic power. It turns out that the barrier created by his brother deflects the powerful blow and throws Cyan back. Cyan realizes that he has wasted a lot of energy. He is disappointed to see that Boris used a rank 9 barrier to resist his demonic blow, which Cyan was unable to break. He wasted his blow on the barrier, and then a light blow from a staff pierced his body. The weapon in his hands fell to the ground, still glowing with demonic energy. Brother Cyan pierced his demon brother with the huge sword, easily cutting through the defense. He said, "How can you be my brother? I wanted to give you a painless death, but you showed your true face." The blond man spoke harshly of Cyan, saying with disdain that he knew of his demonic nature from the beginning, which wounded Cyan. "The fact that I didn't trust you." These words caused deep pain to the hero. Frozen with pain and despair, Cyan could not take his eyes off his brother as tears filled his eyes. The brother ruthlessly kicked Cyan, causing him to fall from his sword, leaving Cyan motionless on the ground. The brother ordered his army to continue on their way, ignoring Cyan as he lay on the ground. After being conscious for a few more seconds, Cyan realized that he had suffered a great misfortune and thought, "How unfair my life is." As he pondered and lost blood, he realized his naivety. The scene powerfully conveys the tragedy of Cyan, who lost his trust, his family, and almost his life because of the betrayal of his closest ones. Cyan, having exhausted all his strength, daringly attacks his brother from behind, hoping for luck. He lunges forward, hoping to strike one last blow before he dies, moving with desperation and a desire for revenge. He screams, filled with pain, hatred, and the joy of the last battle, tearing through the air. Cyan brings his sword blade to his brother's neck, one step away from the fatal blow. At the last moment, his brother counterattacks, and his magical powers destroy Cyan with a burst of light. Cyan dies instantly, ending the fight and his tragic quest for justice. Cyan suddenly wakes up with blood on his throat and coughing. He hears a woman's voice addressing him in a caring manner. "Young Master Cyan." The girl reminds Cyan that it is time to get ready, but he is still unaware of the situation. He says her name in a questioning tone. "Emily, why are you here?" She is shocked and replies with a confused, "Oh my God." The unexpected turn of events gives the story a mystical tone and makes us wonder if the previous reality was real or just a nightmare. When young Cyan wakes up in his bed, he has to find out what really happened. Cyan realizes that he last saw Emily 23 years ago, but she hasn't changed. Emily is surprised by his strange behavior and asks, "What are you talking about? Maybe you were dreaming?" Meanwhile, she is writing down his words. Cyan realizes that his surroundings, The city and the room he is in are connected to his childhood, and the objects in the room remind him of the past. He is shocked to realize that he has returned to his childhood. He touches his face, trying to figure out if it's real or an illusion. Emily does not want to listen to the young man's absurd stories. She rudely remarks that his fantasies are no one's business. "Why are you staying late and not going to practice?" she says sternly to Cyan, demanding that he get ready immediately. The boy is nervous because he has forgotten which training session she is talking about. He asks Emily about the training, but she's already tired of explaining and convincing. On an important day for his family, Cyan finds himself in the courtyard of the Vert clan's duchy, surrounded by an unchanged landscape that brings him back to his memories. He contemplates returning to the past, contemplates the sun of his childhood that illuminates the familiar shapes of his childhood. His life passes quickly through the events that shaped his personality. He wonders if this is a feeling of time travel or something inexplicable. Cyan recalls how 27 years ago, in 1985, the king, surrounded by his family and guards, attended an important event on September 1st. The photo shows him preparing with his children. Before entering the academy, each duke participated in duel training under the watchful eye of the king, who evaluated and tested their skills. The duke's father, Lord Duke, was always present at such meetings, emphasizing their importance to the family and their status in the kingdom. Cyan fought a duel with Cyan Vert, his adopted brother and peer. This fight was not only a battle of skill, but also a battle for family recognition. Cyan's mother was Margaret Hers, the duke's wife, who gave him more attention in the family, even though he was the younger brother. This created tension and rivalry between the brothers. Cyan recalls how his defeat in a duel and his tears afterwards caused ridicule and defined him as an outsider, preventing him from gaining respect from others. After the duel, his father refused to communicate with Cyan and warned him about his reckless actions, which led to a sense of alienation from his family. Now full of confidence in the face of his opponent, Cyan ignores his nanny's advice to give up and fight back. "I just have to win," showing his determination and belief in himself. Cyan knows that it will be difficult to defeat his opponent, but this only strengthens his fight without intimidating him. He is aware of the dismissive attitude of the servants, but this only encourages him to prove his worth and strength. Cyan does not hold a light sword, but a heavy weapon. His strength corresponds to that of the time. In the background, the nurse anxiously urges him to protect himself from injury. Cyan, lowering the sword, realizes that he is not dreaming or hallucinating, as he never had the magical abilities to create such an illusion. He realizes that he has returned to the past and that this is reality, not a dream, and this causes him conflicting feelings. However, he is excited that he has a chance to rewrite his life with knowledge and experience from the future. On the dueling grounds, Cyan encounters his blonde brother, who laughs ironically instead of showing support, emphasizing the rivalry between them and the lack of respect from his brother. Cyan thinks about changing the future and considers the possibility of returning to the past. He realizes that he has a chance to correct his mistakes and improve his fate. With fear and trepidation in his eyes, Cyan watches as his father raises his hand, signaling the beginning of the duel. This test will not only test his skills, but also his inner strength and character. The blonde brother begins the duel aggressively, attacking Cyan with insults and questions about his passivity. Laughing and feeling confident, the blonde brother attacks with his sword raised, ready to strike the decisive blow against Cyan, who stands opposite him. He repeatedly waves his weapon in an attempt to defeat his opponent. Cyan coldly ignores his brother's attack, considering it reckless. At the decisive moment, he deftly steps back, dodging the blow and moving his leg to the side. Cyan's clever maneuver confuses his brother, causing him to miss and hit the ground with his sword. This move emphasizes Cyan's cautious and strategic skills, while also pointing out his brother's weakness in not hitting the target. The blonde man becomes angry with Cyan for dodging the blows, insultingly calling him a coward and losing his temper, showing his irritation and inability to control the situation. Cyan deftly knocked the sword out of his brother's hand with a decisive move, showing his superiority in the duel. Cyan calmly and confidently kicks his brother in the leg without taking his other hand out of his pocket, demonstrating his strength and disregard for his opponent's aggression. The blonde man is hit hard, barely able to get up from the pain, his face distorted with suffering, his eyes filled with tears. At this moment, Cyan not only confirms his martial superiority, but also his psychological superiority over his brother, demonstrating the consequences of his audacity. The blonde falls to the ground, holding his knee and crying in pain, feeling humiliated and powerless. The parents watch in shock. The blonde's surprised mother calls out to her son loudly, not hiding her surprise at the unpredictable development of the situation. Cyan contemplates his victory, realizing that the ultimate triumph is only a matter of putting his sword to the enemy's throat. His eyes shining with excitement and a sense of superiority that reflects his maturity and strength. Cyan contemplates his next steps as he holds the sword, pondering the consequences of his choice. Cyan reflects on the childhood abuse he suffered at the hands of his brother, fueling his need for self-affirmation. The memories give him conflicting feelings and make him question the rightness of his actions. The animosity between the brothers, which began at school, intensifies at the academy, making their relationship more and more strained. Cyan realizes that he must make the hierarchy clear to his brother to avoid further disrespect. He looks determined and ready to act. He has decided to choose his own path and determine his own destiny, not allowing outsiders to limit his options or influence his choices. Cyan, determined to express the feelings he had accumulated over the years, wanted to end the confrontation with his blonde brother. The blonde cried and begged, but Cyan decided to settle the misunderstandings and old grudges. Kranz lost the duel, lying on the ground with tears and foaming at the mouth from defeat and emotional exhaustion. The Duke, impressed by the outcome of the duel, invites Cyan to a meeting and issues an order in his honor. Xiang's unexpected victory shocked the audience and became a turning point in his life, changing the attitudes of his family and witnesses to the confrontation. By the Duke's order, Cyan is now guarded by a high-ranking knight, Elkin, which shows his importance to the duchy and gives him confidence. In the corridor, Cyan sees Kranz's mother, who is worried and reminds him of the family complications after the duel. Cyan jokes about Kranz's condition as he passes the woman, laughing, showing his superiority and change of heart towards Kranz's family after the duel. The outraged woman responds to Xiang with a passionate response, accusing him of impudence for beating her son and daring to ask questions. Her anger revealed a deep grudge against Xiang. Xiang was indifferent to the woman's anger and accusations, and walked past her with his bodyguard, knowing that a duel was necessary. He considered his actions justified by the circumstances and said goodbye to her. The woman reacted to his indifference. "Shouldn't bastards be treated like real children?" Her words reflect the social and familial tension between legitimate heirs and illegitimate children. The woman harshly criticizes Xiang, calling him the son of a dirty whore and claiming that he is only good at begging. She ironically remarks that he should be grateful for any opportunity to resist, accompanying her words with a mocking smile. Turning back to the woman, Cyan realized that she had overdone it with her disrespect for him. He thought of radical ways of revenge, even murder, as a response to her words. Cyan was filled with hatred, but decided that he would not take revenge by violence, but in a more subtle and effective way. He considers how best to punish her, planning to inflict maximum pain through slow and careful torment. Cyan informs the woman of his intention to go to the academy with Kranz, to which she reacts with surprise at hearing this unexpectedly. With her eyes burning, Cyan accuses the Duchess of indifference to her son's well-being, using psychological pressure and manipulation to highlight her vulnerability. After Cyan's words, the woman becomes tense and loses her temper due to intense irritation. She does not refrain from responding to his provocations, trying to hit Xiang and calling him a little rascal. The guard accompanying the boy interrupts the girl and apologizes. "I'm sorry, Duchess." The guard said that the Duke had called Xiang immediately, so there was no time to delay. The woman, seeing the guard's determined look emphasizing the need to leave quickly, calms down. She stood there tense and angry, but knowing she could do nothing to stop them or punish Xiang for his audacity. Xian is satisfied with his advantage after the woman's defeat in their confrontation. "The Duke's orders are unquestionable," the guard says, emphasizing the Duke's authority. The knight protects him as ordered, outranking even the Duke's wife in the hierarchy, and is a reliable ally as Xian has noticed. The Duke invites Xian to enter, opening up new possibilities and perspectives for him. Entering the spacious, sunlit room, Cyan sees the Duke and introduces himself as his youngest son and houseboy. Domavert Cyan has arrived. This was a sign of his official recognition in the family and in the hierarchy of power in the duchy. Cyan bows to the Duke, greets his father, whom he has not seen or spoken to in some 15 years, and reflects on the depth of their estrangement over time. Duke Werd, the high feudal lord of Velis in the Western Empire, addresses his youngest son, Cyan, and commands him to sit down, demonstrating his willingness to listen to him. Known as the guardian of the continent and a demon-fighting hero, the Duke is esteemed for his role in the protection and prosperity of the land. With great energy, magic, and intelligence, the Duke is responsible for the fate of the continent, protecting it from outside threats. After the Duke died in battle against the Demon King's army, he tried to bring peace to his continent so that his people could live in peace. Cyan, sitting in front of his father, realized that his memories of him were different from reality. He remembered how his father had sacrificed his freedom and given his life for the sake of others, and thought, a fool. He remembers a man who sacrificed his freedom and gave his life for others and calls him a fool. The father praises his son's skill in the duel, saying that he avoided being hit by watching his sword. Cyan looks at his father with wide eyes and asks, "So what?" He tries to understand the meaning of his father's words. The father explains how Cyan dodged the enemy's blow by following his sword, which surprised his father's ability to defend himself. The father asks his son when he learned to use a sword after noticing his unusual skill in a duel. Acknowledging his father's insight, Cyan modestly admits that he has developed his skills through daily evening practice, noting his dedication and perseverance, but not boasting of his accomplishments. His father is surprised when he asks Cyan why he hid his fencing talent, not knowing of his interest in the sword. Cyan explains his reticence by saying that he does not want to attract attention, to which his father points out that this does not prevent him from performing in battle. These words embarrassed Cyan, and he realized that his behavior on the battlefield had revealed something he had been hiding for a long time. Cyan's father was concerned about why a control strike was made against Kranz after the victory, and whether it was necessary. The hero thinks about his father's true motives and wonders. What is he trying to prove? Cyan confirms that he did want to prove something. His father takes the opportunity to ask him what it is. Cyan says, embarrassed that he is better than Kranz, even though they are related, and his goal in the duel was to prove it. The answer makes his father smile, which confuses Cyan. Perhaps the father was surprised by his son's candor, or perhaps he felt that his suspicions about the boy's character and motives had been confirmed. The father smiles proudly and says, "Excellent! Your answer shows a deep understanding, and I'm impressed with your talents." This not only acknowledges Cyan's abilities, but also confirms his growing respect for him. The father expresses his belief that Cyan will be an important pillar of the family in the future. Cyan looks at his father a little embarrassed, wondering what effect these words will have on his future, and how he will influence the fate of the family. He remembers how Asher killed him in the past, and reflects on the mistakes and hardships he had to endure. He sees that his father favors his brother Kranz more, and it makes Cyan nervous, especially when he hears his words. He clenches his fist because of the growing tension, but he listens carefully to his father, trying to find the meaning of his words and understand his intentions and expectations. Cyan understands from his father's words that he may have to take radical action if circumstances do not change. He feels a growing willingness to destroy the obstacles to recognition and justice. As his strength grows, Cyan decides that he will go to the front to meet his brother Ashel's challenges. He accepted his father's offer to join the war, hoping to gain honor and recognition. Cyan is eager to prove himself and meet the challenges, ready to defend his country and earn respect, even at the cost of participating in the war. Back in the room, Xiang was confronted with the surprise and disbelief of the maid, who could not believe that he wanted to go to the front. Cyan, sitting on the bed, confirms the suspicion that he is indeed waiting for permission to go to the front. His caring nurse, worried about his intentions, emotionally exclaims, not hiding her fear, "You've gone mad! Do you understand what the front is?" She says this so passionately that it is obvious how much it will hurt her if he goes there. The maid tries to convince Cyan that the situation at the front is critical because of the many terrible demonic creatures that want to kill. She tells him that Vila is the western part of the Usha Empire, which all continents have recognized as the frontline zone, with the Lamai Valley being the most turbulent place. This place is a battleground with a centuries-old history of clashes. Xian's father was initially against his desire to go to the Lamai Valley and set a condition. He had to prove his worthiness to travel within a month. Xian reflects on his own worthiness for the task while examining his arm. He realizes that because of his weakness compared to his peers, he must train hard. Xian clenches his fists tightly and realizes that he must focus on training his physical and mental strength to meet the challenges ahead, which motivates him to improve himself. Xian has retained all of his martial arts skills and experience after the regression, which is a great advantage for him and a foundation for future progress. He feels the magic in his body that he can enhance with training, so he decides to train daily to develop his abilities. Suddenly, someone runs into the room and shouts his name, Xian, catching his attention and forcing him to act. A woman enters the room, hugging herself as if to protect herself or contain her emotions. Alice looks at Cyan with a fierce gaze, as if she wants to punish him. Alice grabs Cyan by the collar and lifts him up, showing her superiority and desire to put him in his place. She shakes her son, screaming and accusing him of madness. Meanwhile, the maid tries to defuse the situation by asking Alice about her business. Alice ignores the maid and focuses on Cyan, angrily accusing him of wanting to go to the front and shaking him. He begs his mother to calm down and let him go. "You're confused after defeating the Crans. You can't do this," she says, throwing Cyan to the ground to get all the nonsense out of him. Alice orders Cyan to get to the roof quickly and yells at him. This suggests that she has a plan, or a test for him to show him the realities of war, or to convince him to change his mind. They go to the roof of the castle for an unusual test that will decide Cyan's fate. Alice challenges Cyan to a duel with one condition. He will be allowed to go to the front if he can withstand her attacks for 3 minutes. This test evaluates not only his strength, but also his will to win. Cyan ties his shoes thoughtfully, wondering if he should take the test. Alice asks Cyan intensely if he wants to earn it, trying to understand his motivation for going to the front. The nectar fills his cup. Cyan, realizing the importance of the question, replied sincerely, "In general, I'm not interested in titles." He suggests that his motivation is not honor or power. Alice calls for Cyan to draw his sword and announces the beginning of the test. Cyan faces a defining moment where he must prove his skill and willingness to fight at the front. Standing in front of Alice, Cyan realizes that less than 12 hours have passed since the duel with Crans. The fatigue of a day of chaos and challenge is taking its toll on him. Despite Cyan's condition, Alice attacks with determination, trying to discover his limits. Her seriousness impresses Cyan, who notices her complete dedication to the fight. Cyan is surprised and worried by his sister's maneuver. He does not panic and parries her attack. Alice is shocked that a 10-year-old boy fended off her attack. Cyan wonders with surprise and confusion why Alice, who is 7 years older than her brother, decided to use all her strength against him. The girl walks away from the boy as he prepares for battle, armed with a sword. She is amazed by his maneuvers, but realizes that his light sword will not withstand her powerful blows. She smiles, realizing that Cyan's intuition is better than she thought, and addresses him with admiration. "Dear Cyan." Cyan realizes that his sister Alice, who now resembles a ruthless warrior, is preparing to strike again, and he believes that his end is near. Alice delivers powerful lightning strikes to Cyan, presenting him with a difficult challenge. Alice skillfully attacks Cyan from different directions, demonstrating her skill and combat experience. Cyan effectively parries Alice's attacks, although his sword is much lighter than hers, causing sparks to fly when their weapons collide. Alice notices the magical power emanating from Cyan's sword, escalating their confrontation. She was astonished to see the unexpected magical power in Cyan during the battle. Her astonished eyes could not understand where this seemingly inexperienced boy got his magic from. Alice is impressed by Cyan's ability to defend himself against her attacks, but she is determined not to give up. Faced with a new threat, her fighting spirit only grows. Fully aware of the seriousness of the battle, Cyan silently curses as she prepares for a tough fight. Alice's energy envelops his right arm with the weapon, intensifying the clash. He dodges a powerful light blow. Alice considers him a strong enemy and wants to teach him a serious lesson. Cyan lands gracefully on the edge of the castle roof, demonstrating the agility and tactical skill to complete the task Alice has set for him. Cyan reflects on the risky moment in the duel with Alice, realizing that the outcome could have been tragic had he not moved his sword. This underscores his sense of responsibility to use his skills and strength. Cyan has the skill of mist-speed swordsmanship, which allows him to kill opponents instantly with techniques such as dense mist, showing the lethality of his fighting style and the importance of controlling his power. Reflecting on the difficulties of fighting without the intent to cause death, Cyan realizes his limited strength and wonders when the trial will end. He is torn between his desire to protect without causing too much damage and his physical and mental exhaustion. Trembling, Cyan clutches the mana-filled sword to compensate for his lack of strength, feeling his resources depleted. He realizes that he must find additional strength. Alice bends down to recite the spell, "Earth Spirit, become my sword," demonstrating her high mastery of magic and her ability to call upon the elements for help. Cyan is tense as he realizes that level 6 magic is a serious challenge that doesn't tolerate jokes. Alice activates a superpower, a water sword, and takes a fighting stance with a sharp sword and burning mana, making her more dangerous. Watching his sister's aggressive maneuver, Cyan wonders if she really wants him dead. Otherwise, this test seems too dangerous. Alice, irritated by her younger brother's unexpected strength and unsuccessful attempts to defeat him, becomes even angrier. She stubbornly strives to win, unwilling to accept defeat. Cyan feels Alice's anger and realizes that he has reached a dead end. He is standing on a pillar of the castle wall from which a fall could be fatal, and if he tries to withstand her blow, he could fall. He has only one chance to win. Cyan abruptly pushes off the wall and moves towards the battle, determined to have a decisive duel with Alice. Cyan is determined to meet his sister Alice's fatal blow, knowing that his life is at stake. In a critical situation, when the aura of her sword shines powerfully, he sees no other option. Cyan attacks with his sword, praying for success and hoping for the help of heaven to escape the threat. At the critical moment when Alice is about to deliver a potentially fatal blow to Cyan, he counts on the protection of Elkin, the elite guard who was supposed to protect him. When Alice pointed her water sword at Cyan, Elkin, an elite knight, suddenly appeared in front of them, shouting, "Enough!" His intervention stopped the fight and may have saved Cyan's life. Elkin plays a crucial role in the drama, parrying Alice's sword thrust while pushing Xiang away to protect him. Alice's stroke illuminates the surrounding night city and castle, reflecting the greatness of her magical power. Elkin looks sternly at Alice after stopping her fight with her younger brother, and wants to reprimand her for her aggressive behavior. He scolded Alice for her overly violent attempts to defeat Cyan's young opponent, holding him down to show his vulnerability and need for protection. Cyan breathed a sigh of relief at the sight of Elkin and felt the tension ease off him, knowing he was safe now. A shocked Alice, having recovered from her anger, realizes her mistake and is deeply sorry for her actions. She apologizes to Cyan on her knees, regretting that she overreacted and expressing her desire to make things right. She doesn't want her brother to go to the front, and it's so strong that she reveals her true feelings and fear of losing him. Cyan, hugging his sister, listens to her apology and realizes that all of Elisa's actions were motivated by care and love for him, not anger. Cyan proudly remembers his sister, who was one of the best students at the Royal Academy, receiving the highest marks in all subjects, whether it was noble swordsmanship or the skillful use of magic. She was very beautiful and was called the Divine Child, and she began training in swordsmanship at an early age. Cyan notes that people had high hopes for Alice, believing that she could become the guardian of the continent, along with Aschewing. After joining the Knights of Light, Alice was killed. Her death not only outraged her family, but also became a great loss for the entire continent. Cyan promises his sister that he will protect her. Alice hears him, but cannot fully understand his intentions. Alice asks Knight Elkin if he is the bodyguard of the Duke, who has recently gone to war, and tries to understand the reason for his presence. Elkin says that he is following the Duke's orders to guard the young lord, but he doubts that he should keep it a secret and thus reveal his mission. Cyan is glad to feel Elkin at his side as soon as he leaves the Duke. He wonders if Elkin would have come out of the shadows if he had continued to ignore him. His thoughts illuminate an awareness of the protection Elkin provided and the possibility of a different outcome. Cyan wonders why his father ordered Elkin to follow him in secret. It shows his father's concern for his safety, but it also raises speculation about the true motives behind this decision. Tired after the day, Cyan falls asleep and snores, feeling comforted and safe in the presence of his sister Alice. Alice watches her sleeping brother with a smile, happy to have time together and to bond after the hardships she has experienced. She says he is just a baby. The next day, Elisa returned to the academy after a brief meeting with her father at home. Meanwhile, Cyan tries to regain his strength by doing push-ups, but only manages to do 9 repetitions with great difficulty. Xian struggles to do the 10th push-up, reflecting on his desire to strengthen his body, which is why he has been working on strength exercises for the past 2 weeks. This shows his determination to improve his fitness regardless of the obstacles. Lying on the floor, barely breathing, he realizes his limits. 10 is the maximum. I shouldn't have exhausted myself. But despite his disappointment, he did not lose his determination. He remembers moments from the past when he was in great shape and confident, which inspired him to continue training. The maid brings him a package from his sister Alice, which makes him happy. Covering her nose, she exclaims, "What is that smell?" She is holding a bottle of hound's blood that he ordered for her earlier. This unique item from the Lemai Valley can also be purchased on the black market, allowing Xiang to increase his abilities and better prepare for challenges. Xian pours the blood of a poisonous demon beast into the plate, which burns and stinks, creating tension and anticipation. The blood, once drunk, is said to increase mana and strength forever, but many believe this to be a myth. Still, it is shrouded in mystery and mysticism. Cyan, a lifelong expert, is convinced of the truth of his words. Emily, worried, asks him if he's really going to drink the drink, expressing concern for his health. Cyan assures Emily that he is the only one who is not afraid of her food, and is used to it, recalling his experience of adapting and using unusual methods to strengthen his strength. Cyan remembers the first dish Emily cooked for him, which almost made him pale. That mushroom soup, he remembers, not losing his determination to pursue his goals despite the difficulties. After drinking the potion, he takes a step towards using his new abilities. Not holding back his emotions, Cyan exclaimed loudly, enjoying the effects of the potion. "This is so much better than that soup!" He was full of energy, obviously feeling the effects of the drink. Emily, surprised by his reaction, looked at him in disbelief. Emily is impressed with his determination. Cyan remarks that he needs to go for a walk in the fresh air. Although his real goal is to test the effects of the potion, he hurries to an important spot, ignoring the obstacles to see the results of his experiment. Cyan arrives at his destination and thinks he hasn't been here for a long time. But he has been waiting for this day for 2 weeks, full of hope for positive change. Taking advantage of the absence of his bodyguard, Elkin, who reports weekly, Cyan enjoys his solitude and reflects on the strain he feels from being under constant surveillance. He recalls how he used to seek solitude to take a break from surveillance. He recalls the story of Ashel, who was told by the goddess of light Lumendel that there was an ancient temple in the mountains. Cyan, though hesitant, puts her hand on the ground, feels a strong mana and searches for the temple, trying to activate the entrance, hoping for a divine revelation. Cyan activates the magic and his hand is covered with an aura. He rejoices, knowing that he is the only one who knows about this place, giving him an advantage and a chance to open it. He strikes the ground, opening a secret passage. An entrance appears from beneath the cracked earth, prompting Cyan to explore. He watches the entrance and says, "Ashel, you have no idea what I'm about to do." His words reflect his determination and desire to go where there are no ancestors or competitors. Cyan discovers a secret dungeon filled with the promise of adventure. He immediately plunges into exploration, eager to face the new challenges this mysterious world has in store for him. Cyan senses the uniqueness of the underground caverns he is about to enter. It seems to him that every corner of this place is filled with ancient energy and history. He reflects on the history of this place, which was once a temple dedicated to the goddess Lumendel. Wars and forgetfulness have erased its history from human memory, but it is still engraved in the stones of the walls. This place was forgotten because of a 300-year war with a demon god. In the depths, Cyan saw a temple with a cozy light emanating from it, as if to point the way and promise answers to the mysteries of antiquity. Cyan is surprised to find the temple in the mountains behind the castle and is drawn to the unusual light emanating from it. The glow illuminates the surrounding space. A huge, powerful sword in the center of the temple glowed brightly, mesmerizing with its energy. As Cyan approached, he immersed himself in the magic of the moment. In the center of the temple, a huge sword radiated a mysterious power, giving visitors a glow. It was no ordinary weapon, but seemed to have a consciousness and wisdom of its own, ready to be revealed to those who could comprehend it. The sword appeared in 1999 on August 12th, during the successful defense of humanity against the attack of the army of the demon king Vilas. Humans were weaker, but they won thanks to ancient relics known as weapons of the gods. The relics helped humans survive and defeat the demons. Among them was Duran Dark, a sword blessed by the goddess of light Lumendel, which was the key to this victory. In the future, Cyan will die from a stroke of the sword, which falls into the hands of Cyan Vert. This event reveals Cyan's bitter fate, linking his past, present, and future through the history of this weapon. Cyan ponders the connection between the Duran Dark sword and his ability to travel back in time, admiring it as it floats and emits a mysterious light. Feeling a calling, he approaches and lightly touches it with his hand. As expected, the sword does not react. It requires certain skills and the right to wield it, selectively unleashing its power. Disappointed, Cyan hits the ground with all his heart, showing his indignation and unwillingness to accept defeat, ready to look for another way to wield the sword. Disappointed, Cyan throws the sword away and is about to leave, saying that he will take care of business first. His words reflect his dissatisfaction, but he does not lose his determination to act. As he approaches the light source, he notices a strange shadow that seems to come from another world. Cyan put down his sword and noticed a dark object that caught his attention and made him think. At first, he thought it was the shadow of the sword, but then he realized that it had another reason for coming here. This is not a shadow. This is something incredible, he thought, facing the unknown and the mysterious. Yes, there is always darkness next to light. He touched the circle and felt demonic energy filling the object, opening a passage to another temple. Cyan entered the room and saw a black dagger floating in the air, radiating a mysterious light. He was excited to see it, as it felt good to renew his relationship with the weapon. Cyan grabbed the dagger, which was a sword to him and which he missed. He felt a familiarity and power that underlined the importance of this moment. He stood before Chiron, a demonic sword with enormous potential and power. He saw a sword that offered new possibilities and paths. unlike the previous one. Holding Chiron's sword, Cyan greeted him. "Good morning, Chiron," showing respect and willingness to work with the mighty blade. As he waved the sword, Cyan realized that Chiron, the living demonic sword, was still asleep and needed to be awakened. He realized that the sword is not only an instrument of destruction, but a partner that needs understanding and cooperation. Cyan looks at the sword with admiration, feels attached to it, and wants to try it out, saying that he wants to cut something today. Suddenly, an unknown shadow appears in front of Cyan, taunting and challenging him, questioning his lack of fear and encouraging him to reflect on his own abilities and courage. The demon appeared before Cyan and challenged him, hinting at the consequences of his awakening. But Cyan, armed with his favorite sword, responded with confidence. "I know. The sword is mine now." The demonic creature releases a dark mist around him and says arrogantly, "You have awakened the sleeping demon sword. Unfortunately, it is too late now, boy," warning of the danger ahead. The demonic creature smiles at Cyan and declares that his body now belongs to it, as it intends to possess him and use him as its new vessel. The sword demon tries to possess the young man Cyan, which becomes a crucial test of his will and courage. Cyan quickly and decisively stops the sword demon's spirit by capturing its essence. He showed a deep knowledge of the weaknesses of this supernatural being, as if he had faced similar enemies before. Cyan, clutching the neck of the demoness who had changed her image, said, "You used to be more careful." These warning words hit the demoness and she asks in shock, "Who are you?" The demoness is surprised by the boy's courage and strength in the dungeon and does not understand how he can subdue her. The sword gives Cyan a special energy in his eyes. He speaks to her confidently. "I told you, this is my sword." Unable to accept reality, the demoness aims her claws, which have become a deadly weapon, at Cyan, determined to end this unusual encounter with all her might. Her resistance is so strong that she tries to kill Cyan with all her might to send him to hell. This fight becomes the climax of their confrontation, with both using all their skills to win. The demoness gracefully escaped from Cyan's grip, pushing his hand away and moving to a safe distance. Her actions were light and graceful, demonstrating great skill and strength. After regaining her breath, the demoness stands before Cyan and asks for his identity. She is enchanting, beautiful, with a proud physique, black hair, and a penetrating gaze that reflects her dark background and personal power and history. Standing on a pedestal and claiming possession of a powerful sword, Cyan exudes an authority and confidence that underscores his right to the weapon. You can feel the demonic energy surrounding him. A curious demoness inquires about his history and possible succession, suggesting a connection to the ancient legends that shroud the sword. Cyan mysteriously leaves the intrigue and confesses to the surprised demoness, who has a strong ira in her, that he is her descendant. He looks at the demoness with a smile and says, "Your master has returned. Bow down." This makes her feel surprised and irritated because she is not used to obey. The demoness only sees Cyan as a child and cannot see the full depth of his personality and potential. She does not believe in his ability to wield power or fulfill his mission. Unable to accept the insult, she attacks Cyan, unable to forgive. Her numerous blows fall on the boy like a downpour, revealing her indignation and desire to test his endurance. Realizing that his words have no effect on the demoness and that the demon sword is trying to take over the owner's body, Cyan realizes that there is no way out. The demoness fights for control of the sword and demonstrates her skill. Cyan dodges the attack and directs the power of the sword at the creature inside him, knowing that it must learn a lesson. Smiling, Cyan activated the control of the demon sword and used it on the demoness herself. The demoness suddenly fell to the ground, unable to get up and realizing her own powerlessness against Cyan and his mighty sword. Cyan summoned the demoness with a proposal. "I'll say this once. Become my subject before I get angry." His confident words demonstrate power, forcing the demoness to consider submission. Tied to the ground, the demoness tries to get up, but in vain. Angrily, she calls out to him, "How can you have such power, you wretch?" Her powerlessness in the face of his strength fills her with rage. Cyan casts the spell Control Demon Sword several times, and each time the demoness becomes weaker, until her face touches the ground from powerlessness. He persistently repeats his call for Control Demon Sword and bangs his head against the ground with increasing force. She pierces the ground with her head, only her legs sticking out. This gesture of submission forces her to acknowledge Cyan as her master, despite her great loss and humiliation. Cyan, testing the demoness's loyalty, commands her to control the demon sword. She says with regret in her voice, "Master, stop. I'm listening to you." Realizing that his mission in the dungeon has been accomplished, and that he has overstayed his welcome, Cyan decides to return to the surface. He will leave the dungeon armed with a sword to see the daylight again. As he leaves the dungeon, the demon transforms into a sword girl. She expresses her joy at the newly familiar feeling of fresh air, hinting that she hasn't felt it for a long time. The demoness, who has been in isolation, responds enthusiastically to the opportunity to return to battle and adventure. She expresses her love and gratitude to Cyan and promises to be by his side at every step of his journey, and they begin their journey together. The demoness, who appeared as a black shadow with pink hair on Cyan's shoulder, asks the boy his name, showing interest in who he is. The demoness is surprised and curious about the unfamiliar name of Cyan Vert, skeptical as to why the powerful force of the Ira would have chosen this particular child. Cyan's revelation of his other purpose in the past adds complexity and depth to his personality in the eyes of the demoness, indicating his unique destiny and place in world history. The demoness is incredulous when she learns that Cyan speaks of his past life without understanding the concept. Cyan calmly explains that he was already dying, which surprises her even more. The demoness is disturbed by his words and looks at Cyan with increased respect and curiosity. The boy's confession about his past life revealed a mysterious secret to her. The demoness jokingly talks about the tranquility of the legendary warrior's majestic sword, trying to calm the people around her. Cyan grabs the sword and says that the true owner will have to wait 20 years before the sword awakens again. Cyan prepares for an important action with concentration, swinging the sword and showing his willingness to use the sword not only as a symbol of power, but also as a means to an end. Cyan shocks the demoness by cutting off the tip of the sword, symbolizing a break with the past and a willingness to face new challenges, heralding significant changes in her life. Cyan easily cuts off the tip of Duranddark's sword and catches it in mid-air, which disturbs the demoness, for whom this sword is the ancestor of her own weapon. She worriedly asks Cyan about his plans, expressing her concern and dependence on the new owner. Holding the sword fragment, Cyan smiles, demonstrating confidence and unpredictability. His words about battling fate foreshadow the many opportunities and challenges that lie ahead. His readiness for the challenges ahead, and a hint of his own plan, and the role he will play in the world can also be read in his words. Cyan sets out on a journey in an old wagon to face new challenges and trials. The old wagon, its wheels squeaking loudly, seems to foreshadow the difficult paths that lie ahead for Cyan. The wagon stopped and braked sharply on the sand between the rocks, marking the end of one stage in Cyan's life and the beginning of another. Cyan got out of the wagon in his traveling clothes and thought about how quickly time had passed and how much he had changed in that time. Cyan arrives at the front and sees the Duke with his father. Both look worried and have an important question for him. His father caringly asks Cyan if he is sure he wants to go to the front and emphasizes that he will not be an obstacle if he decides to change his mind, giving his son one last chance to decide. Cyan's father's order is a powerful impetus for action. He instructs the guard to unseal an important scroll, emphasizing the seriousness of the situation and the need for action. The Duke's bodyguard takes the twisted scroll from its scabbard. He holds it carefully and respectfully, imbued with a certain mystery that hints at its importance and magical properties. Cyan intuitively realizes that the world he has found is a magical artifact, important for summoning a powerful being. The knight unwraps the world with a demonic pectogram, which he activates to begin the summoning process. The monster, the embodiment of demonic energy and darkness, bursts out of the pectogram and quickly fills the environment, representing a powerful and dangerous force. Summoned from the scroll, the monster stood on the sand, confirming its existence and readiness to fight. Its appearance became a test for Cyan and the others, heralding new challenges and unknown threats. Surrounded by fire, the creature with fire from head to tail is a hellhound from the Valley of Lemay, a low-ranked demon. Cyan is not afraid, but rather sees it as a training object. Cyan believes that the trial was just a test for him, and that it was too easy for him because he was pitted against a weak opponent and thus underestimated him. Cyan was supported by the knights and his father, who witnessed his fight with the demon, which gave the event a solemnity and importance. Cyan realized that he was surrounded by knights and his father, ready to help him if he was threatened. This boosted his confidence, but also increased the pressure as he tried to prove his independence and strength. Cyan's father stresses the importance of taking responsibility for one's actions. He encourages Cyan to show determination and pass a test that requires fighting skills and moral strength. The father's bodyguard, who knows Cyan's secret, watches with interest as the boy takes the test, which is just a regular training session for him. The guard is relaxed about the need to be armed, trusting Cyan's abilities based on his observations of the boy and his recognition of his strength. Cyan unexpectedly challenges the guard to a competition, which makes him think twice, as this is not a typical training offer. Cyan expresses his desire to be tested in combat, eager to test himself before his father's deadline and show his willingness to take real risks. Cyan asks the guard to help him find a worthy opponent, revealing his desire for real combat and to improve his fighting skills. The knight is surprised and doubtful about Cyan's choice to fight a duel, believing that a peer, especially Dian Cross, would be a better opponent, reflecting his cautious attitude towards challenges that might threaten a young warrior. Cyan firmly states that he cannot compete with his peers because they avoid talking to him, underscoring his otherness and alienation among his peers. The knight decides to accept the challenge of a duel, realizing that Cyan cannot compete with his peers. The knight is willing to assist Cyan in his quest for self-improvement, even if it means fighting an unequal battle. The knight accepts the duel and sets conditions that will ensure Cyan's safety and allow him to attack without using all of his skills. Cyan gratefully agrees and thanks the knight for his help. He asks the knight to keep what he has learned a secret, a sign of his desire for growth and challenge. Elkin is suspicious of the little lord's request, believing that he is bluffing, since it is difficult to expect seriousness from a child. Cyan's speed and strength present Elkin with an unexpected challenge. The boy shows determination and strength, willing to show his skills even to an experienced knight. Surprised by the strength and speed of Cyan's attacks, Elkin successfully parries the blows, demonstrating his skill and ability to adapt to the unexpected. Cyan continues to attack despite Elkin's resistance, demonstrating his will to win and his desire to test his strength against a worthy opponent. The fight proves to be an emotional as well as a physical test for both of them. Impressed by Cyan's abilities, Elkin begins to see him not as a student, but as a worthy opponent. Cyan uses his speed and skill to perform unexpected maneuvers that confuse even the seasoned knight Elkin, showing his growing combat prowess and unpredictability. Cyan demonstrates a high level of skill, the ability to suddenly appear behind an enemy's back and prepare to strike, which indicates his potential to become a great warrior. Elkin, despite his skill, has difficulty predicting and parrying Cyan's blows, but his quick reaction to unexpected attacks shows his high level of warrior skill. Cyan has a punch so powerful that it can shake the environment, demonstrating his immense strength and raising concerns about his true abilities. Cyan constantly attacks with force, showing aggressiveness and strategy in battle, giving the enemy no chance to counterattack. Cyan stands with determination and gratitude, holding his sword, which emits a cold light, and returns to him after each strike. Elkin is confronted by his unexpected skill. Elkin respects the young Cyan, is impressed by his strength, and appreciates his great potential as his sword trembles under the blow of his opponent. Cyan, relaxing after a difficult fight, comments with a smile, "As I expected, it was not easy for me to defeat you." Grateful for the help, Cyan thanks Elkin, emphasizing the importance of the challenge to him. With a smile, Elkin declares his willingness to always help Cyan in his quest for growth and improvement. Elkin watches Cyan with admiration, impressed by his skill and strength, and cannot believe that he once considered himself weak. Elkin notices how Cyan, who once seemed like a child, now displays a strength and confidence that impresses the guard. Cyan has matured both mentally and physically. Elkin confidently notes that if his hunch is correct, Cyan will be up to any challenge, and his faith in the young man's abilities grows. Cyan stands resolute before the hound from hell, ready for battle. The tension of anticipation hangs in the air. He is determined to endure any test that comes his way. The hellhound attacks with great speed and aggression, exhaling fire that illuminates the surroundings and enhances its demonic appearance. Cyan prepares for the expected attack by assuming a stable posture and concentrating her energy for a counterattack. The hellhound lunges at Cyan with seething rage, eyes blazing, eager for a fight. As its attack nearly hits its target, Cyan deftly parries the blow and sends his power back at the beast. His sword sparkles, reflecting the hound's flames. Cyan pushes the hellhound away, but it still holds its flames and is about to attack again, its eyes blazing with anger and determination. Concentrating all his strength and demonic energy, Cyan prepares to end the fight with a precise blow to the monster's weak spot. He watches the hound closely, feeling the animal's movements and preparing for the climax by concentrating all his accumulated energy. Suddenly, Cyan struck the hellhound with great precision, leaving it unable to react in time. Cyan's sword sliced through the air like lightning, cutting off the monster's head with precision, demonstrating his skill and tremendous strength. Cyan jumped up nimbly and quickly, slashing at the demon's sword from above and defeating the hellhound instantly. The knights were amazed to see the young warrior Cyan defeat the formidable hellhound. Cyan's father proudly watched his son's success among the knights, considering him a true talent destined for great things. Cyan noticed the pool of blood from the hellhound and was upset at the waste of so much precious blood, which would have been enough to fill a bottle if he had been prepared. After collecting the monster's blood in front of the knights and his father, Cyan ironically thought of a cup for the next time. which made him smile after the intense battle. The father proudly and enthusiastically applauds his son Xian, praising him for his skill and courage, and recognizing that his son is ready to defend his country at the front. After being recognized by his father, Xian felt an increase in confidence in himself and his purpose. He thanked his father for his trust and the opportunity to show his strength and dedication. His demon clone, with a reproachful tone in her voice, jokingly asks, "Master, am I a kitchen knife?" Xian reassures her, a little worried but smiling. "No, you are my strength and support. Why do you ask?" He speaks confidently, aware of the importance of their union. Demonessa jokes back, "I hope it's not a kitchen knife. I won't let you down on the front lines," and resolutely promises to serve her master faithfully in battle. The demon insists impatiently, "Then use me, damn it! I need to replenish my strength with blood." She turns to the hound's body, her eyes burning with longing. "Please, just give me a sip." Cyan comforted her, promising confidently, "Don't worry." He took the infernal dagger and said promisingly, "I will use you a lot soon, so bear with me." The demoness purred, asking why she was awakened soon, radiating indignation and irony, but also an underlying expectation of the battles to come. A huge orc with a sharp axe lets out a scream that echoes among the soldiers, frightening them. His huge figure stands out on the battlefield as a symbol of danger. A large bell is ringing, encouraging the soldiers to fight. Its resonance, similar to a battle cry, inspires courage in the defenders. The Lord commanded the knights to line up in defense and destroy the orc, leaving no creature alive. His voice sounded determined. Encouraged by their commander, the warriors, swords ready for rescue and defense, showed their determination and readiness for battle. Above the orcs, a pectogram of the army of light appears, blinding the enemy with its bright light and filling the warriors of light with hope and support in their fight against the darkness. A glowing symbol appears above the groups of orcs, glowing with extraordinary light. It radiates power and magic, hinting at the intervention of divine beings. Threads of light emerge from the pectogram, binding the large orcs with axes. The orcs try to free themselves, but the magical bonds are strong. The army with the king rushes at the magically stunned orcs, attacking them mercilessly and confidently. The knights skillfully cut off the orcs' heads, leaving them unable to resist, each blow precise and deadly, leaving behind lifeless bodies. The orc, caught in the pectogram's noose, is powerless to look back at the approaching brave warrior. The warrior prepares his sword for a decisive strike, having taken a decisive step in the battle of light against darkness. Focusing his strike on the creature, he approaches it steadily. He strikes the orc in the center, and it loses its head. Sitting on top, our hero watches the battle indifferently, not afraid of anything. Next to him, his tutor watches the bloody clash with horror. When an orc's head falls nearby, her fear increases. She turns to the young master with fear and desperation, her voice shaking. "Young master, why did you come here? Aren't you afraid?" The young man ponders her words, remembering his past. "Who would have thought that I would come back here? The memories are like hell." Holding the leash, the father asks his son how he feels. The boy, a little nervous, replies that he is ready for the challenges ahead. The father, in armor on horseback, solemnly instructs his child, emphasizing the unpredictability of war and the need to be ever vigilant. He imparts his wisdom and experience to the child, urging him never to let his guard down. "Okay, I'll remember that, Dad," the son says, realizing the harsh reality of frontline life with its unpredictability and daily challenges. The father teaches him that each battle requires an individual strategy and adaptability to the conditions of battle, emphasizing the importance of each encounter with the enemy. Knights are the key warriors in any tactic, protecting their lands from monsters by going behind the front lines. They are responsible not only for the battle itself, but also for the safety of those behind them from military threats. At the front, amidst the noise of war and fear, a tent protects a young nobleman. He is guarded by indestructible knights, always ready to defend their client. Cyan, peeking through the curtain, realizes his safety in the camp, but doubts he wants to stay there, reflecting on his role in the war. Surrounded by skilled knights, Cyan knows that he will not be able to use the Kairam, a demonic sword with powerful powers that could attract unnecessary attention, in secret. He sees Emily hiding, shivering under a blanket, and senses her fear and uncertainty. Her story about the Duke, who emphasizes the inevitability of death, adds to his fear. She asks Cyan what the Duke was talking about, feeling the weight of responsibility and risk that hangs over every soldier at the front. The Duke's words about the inevitability of death increase her fear and uncertainty about the future. Cyan keeps his cool in the face of the element of fear and uncertainty that surrounds them both at the front. He looks at Emily calmly and confidently, trying to reassure her with his words. His suggestion of retreat is an invitation to a safer place, an escape from the horrors of war. Emily aggressively asserts her role with Cyan, emphasizing her dependence on her help in the face of constant danger. Emily defends her decision not to leave, arguing that she is in danger from the monsters and that she must protect Cyan. She mentions her duty to be a caretaker and protector in every situation. Cyan turns the conversation to the cloak he asked Emily to prepare, easing the tension and emphasizing the intimacy of their time together and the bonds that unite them. When Emily leaves the tent, she acts abruptly, not out of disrespect, but as a defense in a dangerous world. She wants to protect Cyan, even if it means appearing rude. Cyan is upset by Emily's reaction and wonders if he should follow her or give her time. He respects her and wants to keep things going between them, even if they fight. Cyan uses a trick in his temporary home by leaving a doll in his bed to simulate his own presence. He does this so as not to disturb others with his nightly training, showing his desire for self-development despite his limited opportunities. Cyan is hopeful that his cunning plan with the sleeping doll will work, reflecting his ingenuity and willingness to use unusual methods to achieve his goal. Emily is surprised by Cyan's dedication to training despite the late hour. He feels guilty for waking her, which shows his respect and concern for Emily despite their recent misunderstandings. Cyan confidently says goodbye to the nanny with the usual, "I'm leaving, so you take care of things as usual," showing an unusual maturity for his age. He says in a jokingly serious tone, "If anyone asks, I'm asleep," demonstrating a resourcefulness that has served him well in the past. As night falls and tension mounts, Cyan moves to the front lines and prepares for a night of heroism and tragedy. Cyan uses the night veil to move stealthily along the front lines, moving quietly but with purpose. Activating the mist spectrum form, Xiang becomes invisible in the mist and moves very quickly. Cyan realized that he was about to face a crowd of monsters, and his premonition was confirmed when he saw a large gathering of them in front of him. Cyan, his eyes burning with the desire to fight, thinks the moment is perfect for Chiram. He feels that his demon sword is eager for battle and ready for any challenge. Cyan quickly draws Chiram's flaming sword and prepares for battle. The sword senses enemies, and he will use its power against them. The boy feels his demon sword Chiram burning with lust. "Master, I want to cut someone," the sword demands. Cyan is confronted by a large hellhound out for blood, and becomes the first victim of his insatiable weapon. "All right, Chiram, as you wish," Cyan replies, and with heroic enthusiasm he takes on the monsters in his path. He moves quickly and accurately, slicing through enemies on the battlefield, his sword Chiram bringing death and destruction. Using the Misty Sword, Misty Storm, Xian slices through the army of monsters, unleashing energy strikes that scatter enemies before the light of his sword. Xian has defeated all the hellhounds to drink their nectar by piercing a hole with his staff. The nectar fills his cup. He drinks the blood of the hellhounds one by one, absorbing their power. He enjoys this activity, his strength increases, and his sword feels great. Xian, full of fighting fervor, turned to his demon sword Chiram and asked eagerly, "Great, how many enemies do we have to defeat to get stronger?" Cyan says with a smile that the night has just begun, and there is still much to fight. He feels confident and ready for new challenges. Cyan watches his surroundings, sensing the presence of other monsters that he is ready to defeat with his sword. He knows that Chiram is eager to win, and he enjoys every enemy he defeats, gaining strength from each victory. The caravan of wagons, guarded by knights, begins its arduous journey through the mountains to the front, where a crucial battle will take place. A young, elegantly dressed girl in a wagon listens attentively to the warnings about the dangers at the front and looks thoughtfully out of the window, pondering the future. A blonde woman in battle dress offers the girl to return, but she replies sharply that as a princess of the empire, she has a duty to accompany her father on his travels and does not want to be treated like a child. The irritated princess emphasizes her status and duties to the empire and the people, stressing her devotion to family and state interests. She warns the maid that she will be disappointed if she continues to deny her decision. The emotional intensity of the conversation reflects the princess's determination and will to defend her beliefs. The maid mentions that the family's youngest son has returned from the front. The surprised princess asks if Duke Worth really brought his younger son, who is the same age, with him. The maid explains that the Duke did not intend to take the boy, but he decided to go, and since they are about the same age, they should get along. Irritated, the princess refuses to be bothered with trivial matters and sends the maid away, wanting to sleep. The annoyed maid leaves and the princess lies down. Suddenly, the princess turns to the maid. "What if she asks his name?" The maid says his name is Cyan Vert. The princess begins to think and says, Cyan. She makes an angry face, crosses her arms and shouts, Cyan Vert! Gah! On the front line, the knights are fighting bravely, while the terrible winged monster roars with its heavy blows. The commander takes care of his subordinates, asking if they are all unharmed after the fighting. The battle was so successful that everyone survived. It was a really great job, and it was time to go back to camp, the master said. Suddenly, the commander-in-chief turned his attention to his son. He noticed that the boy was taking part in the fighting, despite all the horror happening on the front line. The boy, keeping his foot on the body of one of the monsters, was putting his saber back into its sheath. He noticed how Cyan was actively adapting to life at the front. The boy bows his head to his father, proudly telling him that he is getting used to life at the front. These words make his father happy. He never imagined that he would stay on the front line for so long. He is proud of his son. The guy was embarrassed by his kind words. His father suggested that they meet tomorrow morning because they had a lot to talk about. The boy was shocked because he had never heard his father say such warm words before, and he felt a little uncomfortable. As soon as night fell and everyone in the camp fell asleep, the boy went hunting, where he had a lively encounter with monsters. Avoiding the monster's blows, he holds his knife tightly and realizes that the Death Skull is a dangerous opponent. Standing in front of the boy, Death thirsts for his blood, even though he met it not far from the camp. He realizes that death usually shadows in the deep valley, so he is lucky. Desperately looking for a way out of the difficult situation, he is confronted with the offer of a demoness imprisoned in knives, who offers to help him, asking him to give her control over events. However, despite her vow not to take full control, the boy realizes the danger of her promises and knows that her true intentions may be predatory. The death worm emits a terrible poisonous odor. Cyan's blows fail to cause significant damage to the enemy, as it quickly recovers. Jian realizes that in such circumstances the battle could go on forever. A month has passed since he went to the front. He has drunk the blood of many beasts, but he has not yet felt full. During another monster attack, he realizes that he has no other choice. He decides to use her and go along with all her plans, naming his demoness Kairam. He applies the nebulous technique of the 9th form of the demon's sword, aimed at cutting through the monster's red, thick skin. Cyan delivers the decisive blow, using his elemental powers to defeat the hideous monster. The monster is burning with rage and pain from the blows, which he perceives as lightning strikes. The guy is preparing to tear it apart like Tuzik the hot water bottle by activating the mist sword. The lightning strikes are aimed at identifying the painful points of the huge monster. The monster releases high-frequency sounds with a cry of pain. The guy covered by the sword aura does not retreat. As the embodiment of red demonic fire, he jumps over the creature and ruthlessly strikes, fighting a fierce battle. On the other side, the knights are investigating. The wolf is found dead and bloody, with the time of the murder not too long ago. The knights realize that an evil force, possibly a demon, may have been involved. The commander decides that the incident cannot be ignored if a demon intervened. The corpse should be burned immediately, and the area should be thoroughly examined. The wolf's body is torn apart, and the knights notice that the marks from the ball's impacts are familiar. The commander-in-chief wonders if this is DGCJGVU. A guard with a torch in his hand approached the commander and said that he had something important to show him. They walked around the stone, and a fantastic scene opened up before them, illuminated by the torch held by the guard. An unknown creature had killed the warrior, who was lying bloody and dead, and they realized that an ordinary warrior could not have defeated such a huge monster. This thought haunted the commander. They assumed that it could have been an entire organization. On the battlefield, the demonic sword takes over Cyan's body, because the purpose of the sword is to excite its power, allowing itself to control the bearer. However, this carries a terrible responsibility. If he does not keep control, the sword can destroy him. The young man wakes up in his bed and realizes that using the sword to destroy just one monster would be a crazy thing to do. Jian gets out of bed, happy to have survived the sword fight. He recalls how he drank the blood of the demon creature, which made him stronger. Last month, his body would not have been able to withstand such a test. Then Karen turns to him and says that she understands everything now. He has the appearance of a child but behaves like an adult. She remembers how he came into her life and how he treated her. Despite being a newcomer, he had a deep knowledge of geography down to the smallest detail, including the Lina Lime. His swordsmanship, in particular the mist technique, seemed extremely polished, as if he had been practicing for years. Karen believed his story that he had once died and come back to life. Karen assumed he was a regressor and asked him if that was what surprised him. The boy assured her that he had told her exactly that, because he had been told that this should have been enough to understand. Karen hugged Liutia and asked him what city he was in. The boy's lack of explanation was understandable, as his laziness prevented him from doing even the simplest things. The demoness emphasized that killing someone like him was not an easy task. If she is correct, he could have been killed by the owner of the Durandal, a legendary sword, and another possibility is that he died in a duel or was brought here. She feels that the boy is hiding the truth by asking about the source of her conclusions. Nevertheless, she states with confidence, "You looked at the sacred sword with undisguised disgust, as if you had stepped on mud." She added that she was able to compare the facts and solve the mystery. She looked him firmly in the eyes, emphasizing that although his goal seemed justified and pure, she did not share his beliefs and was indifferent to his motives. But there was a certain caveat. If she discovers his mistakes or weaknesses, she will overlook them. The indignant boy struck back and sharply remarked, "Know your place, because you are not reckless." The boy continuously bothered her, as if he had landed directly on the books. Despite her assurances, he doesn't feel any change in her. She remains the same as she was in his past life. He comes out of his tent and sees the camp in a commotion. Everyone is fussing and it is not clear what they are up to. The maid turns to the young warrior in confusion. "You've finally woken up, young sir." But the boy still couldn't understand what was happening. She told him that she had found the corpse of a high-ranking monster. He immediately realized that he was in danger. Everyone was on alert because it had been a long time since they had seen such a high-level monster near the camp, and it was a big concern. However, this did not faze the boys, which in turn scared Emily. The boy was only interested in the topic that was being discussed in the camp, in particular about a suspicious person. During the conversation, the king's bodyguard approached the young Cyan master and addressed him. He balled his hand into a fist and said that the duke wanted to see him immediately. The guy realized that he had neglected to care for the bodies of the dead, because the soldiers had unexpectedly stumbled upon these bodies. His plan to enjoy life before entering the academy might fail. The boy entered the tent where his master was staying and greeted him, calling him by name. The master noticed that the boy was bowing his head to him, and expressed hope that he would not have to talk about the incident. With a cold look, the owner looked around the room and ordered him to sit down. The boy coolly accepted his father's call, because he had not yet found any excuses for his actions. They sat down at the table, and the father, not wanting to cut corners, immediately started talking about what he had seen last night. The boy replied that he had gone to bed early because he was tired. However, his excuse was inappropriate, as he had left many traces, and the father was aware of this and decided to ask his son about the gypsy sword technique. Perhaps his misconception would make him change his mind. The boy put his hands on the table in fear and asked anxiously why he was asking. Jian realized the improbability of the situation. It was hard to imagine how a small child could overcome the giant and formidable worm of death. The young man asked, "What is troubling you, father?" His father replied, "You probably heard about the events that happened last night near the camp?" He told his son that they needed to look into it more thoroughly, but that there seemed to be a secret organization of killers behind it, which threw a chill into the room. His father speculated that this organization had been around since ancient times and had not yet achieved its goal. They had killed countless nobles under the guise of purification. Remembered for their ability to create a black fog around them, they disappeared after decades. The last time they were seen was 100 years ago, but the body of the deathworm was surrounded by black fog. The father realized that the traces were left by the idol they worshipped, the very breath of divinity. Realizing that the fog had destroyed the deathworm and other demonic creatures near the camp, the boy was amazed. He had pinpointed the source of the power that had last been recorded by the organization 3 centuries ago. The father emphasized that they could not find out the reason for their sudden appearance, but he should be careful. Of course, he will contact the Empire and conduct a thorough investigation. The boy is happy to realize that he has helped, believes in his opacity, and is convinced that he has not been exposed. However, the father realized that his son was too young to tie his life to me. The father asked who else would be coming, and the boy replied that His Majesty would be visiting them today. The whole camp would be there. My father clasped his hands and said, "In this regard, I wanted to ask you a favor." The boy was surprised because he did not realize that it could be such a one-sided favor. The arrival of His Majesty the Emperor was accompanied by the knights playing trombitas in celebration. At this time, Lord Williams and his retinue bowed to honor the Imperial Majesty. The great emperor arrived on horseback and joyfully greeted Lord Williams. The emperor got down from his horse and approached the lord. He asked him to behave more simply and to abandon the solemn ceremonies. William looked at Cyan and exclaimed, "This is the same child." Cyan greeted the emperor, introducing himself as the youngest in the Cyan Vert family. The emperor, impressed by the little boy's resilience in harsh conditions, proudly put his hand on Willius's shoulder and proclaimed that his children were different from the ordinary. However, the boy is sarcastic. What kind of favor is he asking for? Or did he just want me to recognize myself as his son? During the emperor's visits, he had always stayed within the mansion, watching through the window, and now he had the honor of greeting him, looking him straight in the eye. The emperor quickly got down to business. His carriage was already waiting for him, and he expressed a desire to introduce someone. A person in red boots stepped out of the carriage, which was opened by servants. The fifth princess of the empire, Severus, is a character in a mythical, possibly literary story, who possesses majesty and power. Her story may tell of adventures, intrigue, and the consolidation of power within the empire. Since you have not provided details about her or context, I cannot provide a more specific paraphrase. If you need more information or details, please provide more information about the fifth princess of the empire, Severus. The young man recalls the tragic fate of Princess Severus. Yesterday during lunch the Lord said that he would spend the next day accompanied by Princess Arin. The boy was not very eager, and remained amazed that he was the one who was entrusted with this task. However, his father emphasized that it was advisable to keep the princess company because they were the same age and would meet at the academy. He had seen the princess several times at the academy during breaks between classes. The Panuvav expressed the opinion that it would be appropriate and not time-consuming to find a common language with someone from the royal family, and added that his father would be pleased if they got along. He wasn't thrilled with the person, but he couldn't dismiss her words, knowing that he wanted them to have a friendship like the one he had with the emperor. The boy realizes that they cannot build mutual understanding with this man, and the girl is not destined to become his wife. He exhales heavily, realizing that he cannot say it out loud, because the consequences remain unknown only to him. It annoyed him, but for now he had to obey. The young man met the eyes of the empress, who asked him a question. She asked him why the river was so red, and he was surprised. "You mean the river of blood?" The girl was shocked by the sight of the river of blood flowing throughout the valley. The color of the stream was easily explained. Because demonic trees that are old or damaged cannot compete with others for resources, they instinctively absorb water. The dead trees and their sap end up in the river, staining it red due to decomposition by mana. The girl is shocked to find out if it is really the blood and essence of demonic beasts, to which the boy confirms that they drink it and bathe in it, which is extremely repulsive. He warns the girl not to go near that place. The feeling of disgust bothered the girl for the rest of the week. A boy stands on the edge of the cliff and tells her that ahead is the realm of demons, the place where they live. The guy says that if she walks along the shore, she might even meet their king, who will be smiling, although no one in their right mind would do that to her. A bright light caught their attention, flickering in their direction. The girl asks about the light in the distance, and the boy explains that it is the third sentry post to the west. This yellow light heralds the approach of demonic beings. The girl is shocked and terrified to realize that she is surrounded by demonic beings. With a powerful cry, the Lord calls for the defense of the king. He leads a squad of knights to the third guard post to the west. The emperor said, "Well, Willius, don't start." But the Lord stood his ground, confident in his rightness. The emperor asked if he thought he had come here just to rest, and then drew his mighty sword because he was bored. "The Lord agrees with your majesty's decision, saying that it is acceptable." The emperor announced that he would join the raid against the demons, which was strongly supported by his soldiers. When the Lord called on him to join the battle, the young man, with his spirits high, responded in the affirmative. "Yes, father." The surprised girl asked the boy if he could really fight his enemies. He confidently replied that he could, but for now he would only support from the rear, advising her as a princess to take cover. She wants to be taken with him. She stubbornly objects, arguing that being of the same age she also has the right to go, but her chambermaid tries to hold her back, because the young lady is still too young. The boy, slightly embarrassed by her remarks that this is a place where people die, not a playground, but the girl ignores his words, confidently stating that no one can stop her and she will go wherever she wants. Suddenly the boy said the name of the guard. "Yulkin," he said. A guard appeared behind her and said that he would replace the royal knights and escort his majesty to a safe place. "The knight turned to your lordship and said that he was following me." However, the girl did not stop. The point of her words was directed at the boy, indignantly asking how he dared to treat her, a princess, in such an indecent manner. The guy with the cold gaze and fiery eyes approaches her and says, "Because of her stubbornness, dozens of knights may die, because every second on the battlefield decides who will live and who will die." Is she able to take responsibility for the lives of these knights? The girl could barely hold back her tears at these words. Jiang turned and walked away, emphasizing, "Go back, otherwise you will cry like a child, your majesty." The girl fell silent, her maid and bodyguard standing next to her. The scene takes place on the battlefield, where a huge direwolf dispels terror. It attacks and devours the clan's knights. Despite the enemy's overwhelming attacks, The warriors are ordered not to retreat. Then the leader raises his sword, ordering the warriors to take their positions in the ranks. The Lord has ordered them to defend His Majesty and destroy all the monsters, sparing no one. The warriors decisively move to attack despite the obstacles. The story of Emperor Dion Severus develops, and we learn about his personal life. Dion had 2 wives. First, Diana Quisel, who died, and then Cassandra Napple, considered a representative of the judiciary. The previous empress gave birth to the first and second princesses. The current empress gave birth to the 4th princess and the 4th prince, as well as representatives of new blood in the nobility. The 5th princess was an illegitimate daughter of a simple peasant woman. However, Oren did not care about the attitude of others. She fulfilled her sacred duty as a member of the royal family, devoting more time to her studies than anyone else. The disgruntled nobility accused her of treason. After the fall of the empire, it was rumored that she died alone of an illness on an island, and she was called the tragic princess. She could have lived happily if she hadn't been so greedy. It would have been better for her to have no ambitions, Karen told the boy, who had once been warned about this by his father. The boy waved his saber with a sharp movement and said, "Circumstances are such that we are royalty." The battle scene continues. The monster is relentlessly attacking the knights, and the slimy slug monsters are scattered on the ground. From the side, in a safe distance, Ician watches all this. A bright light pierces the earth. The Emperor has ignited the holy lightning, his eyes burning with fervor. He uses this technique to destroy everything in his path. He was the 8th-ranked holy mage, but because of the throne, perhaps he would have become the head of the Association of Magicians. Our hero is convinced that medium-ranked demonic beasts are not a challenge for him, and the battle is just entertainment. After the battle, the Lord and the Emperor gathered in the tent for a refreshing drink. It had been a long time since they had been together, and as the Emperor raised his glass, he expressed his sadness for the times they had shared. But the Lord refused to drink while at the front. The Emperor continued the conversation, touching on the current state of the empire. Recently, the number of assassinations of noblemen has increased. The Lord wonders if there is a pattern in the series of murders. The Emperor replies that all the dead nobles were corrupt. A dark mist was observed at the scenes of each murder. I wonder if they had any thoughts on this. The Lord said that he had found fresh footprints nearby, which he believed belonged to entities that had become active again. The Emperor emphasized that this made sense, but they had yet to investigate it. The Emperor poured wine into his glass and noted that he appreciated the purity of his path, but could not stand to see people lose their peace. However, this was not the only thing that concerned the Emperor. Apparently, a nobleman had spread a rumor that the 5th princess was to blame for the misunderstanding. The Lord was shocked. He asked a question. "Do you mean that Princess Erin is to be linked to these events?" The Emperor claims that he has been suppressing these rumors, believing them to be unfounded. But it seems that there is a group that is seeking to take advantage of this. The Emperor asks his friend to continue to rule for him and to take care of the empire in the event of his death. Vilius Worth assured, "I will fulfill your Majesty's orders until the end of my life." The Emperor expresses his gratitude to the Lord for his loyalty while it is raining over the tents. Returning to our hero, the maid asks what happened. Jian asked, "What did you expect?" However, the maid objected, emphasizing her royal status and asking how they could leave her so easily. She became angry, saying that he would never get married under such conditions. But he denied it, emphasizing that he was not going on a date. Although he has his doubts, he trusts her to take care of things in his absence. Once again, he prepares to leave the tent at night, which alarms the maid as a heavy rainstorm rages outside. He noticed that she did not wait for him, did not worry. When he was about to leave, the princess was already standing at the door. The maid was frightened, not immediately realizing who it was, but Jian was amazed by the princess's arrival. She took off her hat and asked, "Where are you going?" She apologized and offered to discuss the matter if he was free. The maid was amazed by the princess's visit, and a sparkle appeared in her eyes, because she was worried about the future of the boy and dreamed that he would marry her. The Empress's guards surrounded the Cyan's tent, leaving them alone. The girl asks the boy how much time has passed since he arrived at the front, to which he replies that it has been about a month. But the question is why she came to him. The girl paused for a moment, keeping an intrigued look on her face. But the maid, who had been sitting on the edge of the bed and tossing and turning the whole time, was fascinated by the couple. For some reason, the girl asked her to leave, and the boy made the same request. The maid embarrassedly suggested that the guests have a good time, hinting at something exciting. As soon as the maid left, tension was felt. The maid's words struck a chord with the boy, who did not understand how to have a good time with a 10-year-old child. Embarrassed, the girl began to talk, expressing regret for her previous behavior, which she believed was not appropriate for a princess. The boy scratched his head and assured her that she shouldn't worry, and apologized for his rudeness. But the girl replied that she would have done the same thing in his place, adding that although they were the same age, he looked much older. Left alone, the guy finally saw what she was really like. The girl, pointing to herself, asks the boy, "You're going to the academy too, right?" Before he can answer, she responds with irony, "I'm sorry." The girl was deeply shocked, especially by the words, "I can't help you, and I'm not sure if I can be of any help." "If you're just here for friendship, then please leave the tent," the guy replied rudely. Nevertheless, the girl wanted a good relationship, but the guy was cruel. She cried and asked if he thought she was empty and worthless. The guy indifferently ignored her words. She apologized, barely holding back her tears, and admitted that their company had been useless, and said that she regretted the time they had wasted. As she passed him, she said, "I guess I was foolish to hope that they could at least talk." On her way out, she dropped a phrase that deeply struck the guy. "You are nothing like Mr. Ashel." He suddenly grabbed her hand and squeezed it tightly. The girl was shocked and asked, "What's wrong with you? What are you doing?" The guy replied, "Ashel, how do you know my brother?" The girl feels pain. The guy is squeezing her hand too hard. She tells him that she met him last year during a field trip to the Royal Academy. He advised her not to worry about the opinions of others and to fulfill her duties as a princess. At that moment, the hero realized that he could have advised her, but not a single word would have changed his situation. He knew better than anyone else his brother's devilish nature and his manipulative skills in the past. It all started with an acquaintance, and the plan to destroy Princess Erin had been in his mind since childhood. The boy gritted his teeth and asked him to warn her. Suddenly, a stranger interrupted their conversation. His maid ran to them in terror, calling for the young master. The maid screamed in terror, "You have to run away!" Suddenly, the Siang tent with the princess exploded, turning into small pieces. The demonic creature struck a powerful blow that scattered everything around. The demon suddenly appeared near the camp, causing the knights to be confused and immediately realized that they had to check the safety of the young master in the tent. The monster struck at the place where the children were hiding, and the maid sobbed in terror. She realized that the monster had killed their children. She sobbed, but the monster ruthlessly stifled her tears, killing her hope. The news shook the camp, but not everyone immediately responded to the noise. The Lord Emperor was in the middle of a dialogue, and the noise alerted them. A messenger reported a demon attack on the camp in the border area, where the princess was reportedly staying at the time of the attack. The Emperor ordered all troops to the rear of the camp to ensure the princess's safety. The command was clear, so the troops immediately began to fulfill it. The Emperor was aware of the ambush near the camp and tried to understand for what purpose and to meet with whom it was conceived. In the camp scene, the orcs destroy everything around them, engaging in battle right in the middle of the camp. The hero of our story, being behind a rock, was confused by the sudden appearance of deadly worms and ogres. They all survived, being protected by orcs, ogres, and worms of death. These creatures were supposed to be hiding in the depths of the valley, but somehow they ended up behind the camp. Our hero felt that something had changed. He wondered if he was to blame, when suddenly the maid interrupted his thoughts. She was shocked by what had happened and thought he was dead. Promising never to leave him again, she struggled with her grief. The moment the orc struck them a powerful blow, on the verge of death, the boy saved the princess and dodged the blow. He remembered how he had once defeated a demon king, and he could not let his life end at the hands of a mere troll. The princess was worried about the fate of the knights in the camp. The maid reassured her that all the knights were safe and sound. The girl feels guilty, realizing that the trouble might not have happened if she hadn't come along. She is choking on her tears. "The knights are trying to cheer you up, Your Majesty. We're fine. It's our duty to protect you," says one, bowing down to her. Another promises with enthusiasm, "Your Highness, we will protect you, even at the cost of our own lives." The boy senses danger nearby and warns the others about it. A huge hand appears behind the knight, trying to grab him. It squeezes him like a toy, and blood begins to ooze from his throat. A giant orc monster as tall as a house picked up the unfortunate knight and stood over everyone, causing terror around him. Panic-stricken, the girl was numb, unable to move, while Asia rushed forward, calling out to everyone to retreat. The orc was laughing, realizing his superiority over everyone, but his gaze stopped at Cyanna. The boy realized that all these monsters had come for him. The orc dealt with the knight, pushing him back. Turning to Cyan, he said, "I'll take care of the troll, and you and the princess should leave this place as soon as possible." The maid speaks to the girl alone. The maid, running away from the princess, urges Mr. Knight to go ahead, addressing a knowledgeable knight nearby. At the same moment, the boy realizes how eager she was to escape. Then, he wonders what happened to her vow to stay by his side. Despite everything, the soldier raised his arms high, trying to strike. Cyan, armed with a saber, throws himself into the fight with determination. With a swift leap, he rises above the monster, striking it numerous times. He wonders why the demons are so drawn to him, as if they sense something special about him. At this point, Karen tells him that he has drunk the blood of an unheard-of number of demonic beasts to gain power, and that's why they can smell him for thousands of kilometers. It would be strange, she said, if it were not so. Cyan, listening attentively, asked, "Did you know all this? And why are you telling me now?" Care gave Lipko a sly smile and reminded him that he needed his body. This moment of the session caught the cunning bastard in her sly ways. He deftly dodged the monster's attack. Picking up a demonic sword, he orders her to shut up, to which Karen asks him to be more attentive. Cyan is standing in front of a huge monster that wants to kill him. Regardless of the number of monsters attacking him, he will fight tirelessly. The giant orc rushes with furious force to hit him. Xian flew up and ran to attack the orc's head. With a single blow, he took the orc's head off. The huge, high-ranking monster instantly loses its head, and its decapitated body falls to the ground. The boy realizes that he hopes to go unnoticed. Hoping to be invisible, he is about to have a drink, ignoring the presence of the higher-ranking demon. However, when he stepped on the ground, the hero saw a horde of high-ranking demons ready for battle, which promised him more than just quenching his thirst. However, one sight in particular caught his attention. A gigantic monster was perched on a rock. A huge dragon appeared in front of the boy, and he could hardly realize that this giant creature had come for him. It opened its jaws and a bright ferocity poured out of them, but it was not just a toy blade. He encourages him, saying, "This is not a small monster at all. It's probably out for his blood." At that moment, the boy activated the demonic sword and, smiling, said that it did not matter where it came from. His task is to capture and, together with Karem, catch the dragon, which they must eat. The blow knocks the orc down. The Emperor and the Lord try to get to the wagon club, believing that the last monster may be there. The Emperor asks about the fate of the princesses and your son. The Lord replied that he could not find the missing, suggesting that they might have died. However, the Emperor assured him that there is no reason to worry, and that he is confident in their safety. The Lord assures him that the main thing is to find the princess, because she is still very young and he is not in danger. The Emperor was chilled by the Lord's words and asked if it was really his son, because the Lord seemed too calm. The knight ran up to the king, saying, "Your Majesty, we have found the princess." "Are you sure?" he replied. The girl hurriedly approached her emperor, who, seeing her, greeted her joyfully, exclaiming, "Aaron, my daughter!" He hugged her and asked if she was hurt. "We have to save him," she says, "but he doesn't understand who needs to be saved." With tears in her eyes, she said, "We must save Xian if necessary at my expense." The emperor said soothingly, "Calm down and tell me what happened." The Lord turned to the maid. "You must be my son's maid?" She confirms it. The Lord asks in a cold tone, "Tell me what happened to him." The maid replied worriedly that not even the Duke had ever spoken to her in such a threatening manner. She admitted that the young gentleman was only a decoy to buy time to escape. The Lord's gaze became cold and intense because of the situation. The knight, standing next to the maid, said, "I remember where I last saw the young lord. If you command me, I will go with my friends to rescue him." The emperor urges the Lord to answer, for he has been thinking for a moment. The Lord stands still and says, "We will not do that." As the emperor calms down, the girl stops crying, not realizing the seriousness of the situation. The emperor emphasizes that the problem with the camps must be solved without delay, because if they fall, hard times will come. Demonic beasts will invade the empire. They need to quickly restore this place to prevent new victims. But they ask, "What about the young master? Are we going to leave him to his fate?" The Lord said in an even tone that he had done his duty by helping the princess escape. This is a manifestation of loyalty. The emperor got down on one knee, silently accepting the words of the girl, who could not accept the news. In tears, she realizes that everything is always because of her. But suddenly, on a moonlit night, a blood-curdling scream is heard, frightening everyone. The girl, like everyone else, looks up. They saw not just a monster, it was a dragon. She holds her breath, her eyes fixed on the dragon, and a striking scene unfolds before her. Cyan is holding onto the dragon's paw and flying in the air. He flies silently, holding onto the dragon's leg. We return to the depths of our antiquity, where dragons, powerful and noble creatures, occupied a place closest to the Creator, were extremely rare. Our hero, being a mere human being, should not have approached them, but he still held onto the creature's leg. The guy was proud of the opportunity to encounter such a strong animal, but one question kept bothering him. Why is he forced to fly over those who should not see it? The camp fell silent when Cyan was spotted on the back of the flying dragon. The girl screamed out Cyan's name, for she was very worried and blamed herself for all his troubles. The Emperor and the Lord were surprised to see the dragon ridden by the Lord's son. In the tense situation, when the situation got out of control, the Lord stood still. He was asked why he did not try to do something, and why he remained inactive. At that moment, Cyan held onto the dragon's leg, realizing that his desire was to drink the beast's blood. He did not expect such a development. Cyan challenged the demon dragon. Having transformed into a demonic creature, armed with Karen's dagger and pointing his sword against the dragon, he realized the need to catch and devour the monster. But numerous high-ranking demons stood in his way, and he could not waste time on them. Having activated the ability of the Sword of Mist, he instantly cut the villains like lightning, dividing them into pieces. Overcoming all obstacles, he landed successfully. The mighty dragon, exhaling flames, mysteriously watched the hero. The young man realized that he was just an immature giant, too young. In a moment, the dragon accumulated a huge amount of energy in its jaws, which blinded the boy with its brightness. The dragon suddenly pounced on the boy, destroying everything in its path with its devastating blow. Its laser-like lightning flame unmistakably shot at our hero, dissecting everything it hit. The guy deftly dodged the dragon's blow, going around it from the side. Deciding to troll the monster a bit, he said mockingly, "How unseemly of you to spit on me during our first meeting." Then the hero struck the dragon right in the face. The blows caused significant damage to the dragon, which made it roar, shouting out dragon pain. The powerful blows forced the dragon to retreat. It was bleeding and salivating, and drops of blood fell to the ground. The angry dragon could not stand the humiliation and pushed the boy aside. As he was thrown back, he swung his tail like a huge spear to strike his opponent. The boy had a trick up his sleeve, being prepared for possible unforeseen circumstances. He deftly dodged the dragon's powerful punch by using a ball-less style. He dodged another powerful blow from the dragon. The dragon fell to the ground from the heroic fight, cracking the ground beneath him. The boy, somewhat tired after the battle, feels pain in his shoulders and realizes that he is not yet strong enough to defeat the dragon. Despite the circumstances, he realizes the need to end this creature and gets into a fighting stance opposite the dragon, which is also ready for a quick fight. The dragon pushed off the ground, flapped its wings, and its rise almost blew Cyan, our hero, away. Having blocked this aggressive gust of wind, he vowed to never succumb to the same trick again. Suddenly, however, he noticed that the dragon began to retreat. Cyan, confused by the lizard's intention to leave him, was not going to let it go. He jumped up high to stop it. He found himself on the tail of the dragon, and flying above the emperor, everyone could see Xiang flying after him. The boy realized that his luck must have run out. Everything that was supposed to happen had already happened. Despite the circumstances, he wondered how he could cope with it. However, Karen suddenly interrupted his thoughts, asking him anxiously why he was not attacking. The guy responded sharply, reproachfully asking if she couldn't see the people beneath them. Karen was indifferent to the people around her, and suggested that I take some action, while the guy responded sharply, expressing his desire for me to cast out the demons. Speaking about the consequences, he said that he would be immediately burned at the stake as a witch. Karen continued to pester, remarking that someone was going to ride the dragon's tail, and the guy replied, "Don't interrupt my thinking, please." Xian watched as his father activated 8th ranked magic as knightly swords rose above the icon. The boy realizes that the situation is getting tense as his father resorts to using complex magic. He intends to use the mysterious Sword of Heaven, realizing that his son will be in the striking zone. The boy is horrified to realize that his father has used his superpower. An infinite number of swords rush at the dragon with his son on its back. The boy confirms that he is the chosen one, dedicated to the defense of the continent, and is ready to take the blow of the swords to fulfill his destiny. He dodges every blow struck by the Lord, encouraging the dragon, rejoicing in his agility. If the dragon continues to avoid them, everything will be fine. Suddenly, however, the dragon noticed that the sword thrown against him was coming straight for his face, and he could not avoid it. As he let go of the dragon's leg, he was stabbed right in the leg. The guy falls to the ground with unstoppable speed, clutching his head, thinking with disbelief about the lost delicate dish. Flying down, Karen asks the boy if he is going to fly or maybe kiss the ground. However, the boy is afraid to use the fog because he might be burned. Realizing that her fate is linked to his life, Karen calls him a fool in despair, accusing him of intending to die senselessly. The guy is silent in response, trying to find a solution. However, he catches a great idea. He thinks about it and considers one option. But Karen asks him if he is really going to do what he has planned. The guy walks straight to the blood-stained river, wondering what else he can do in such circumstances. He falls into the waters of the Red Stream. Some people were watching this spectacle. They saw the dragon, who stood out with his demonic posture, and they realized that they were witnessing a very unusual sight. Behind him, his demonic friend was standing and talking. However, the man claims that there may be other demonic beings in the area, waving his hand in that direction. His friend notices that people are settling outside the area. The man wonders if it is possible for a man to defeat a dragon. There is a tense silence around them. The demonic counselor asks what is troubling you. He replied that he felt a strange but familiar energy. His colleague suggested that if he was so interested, he could check it out for himself, but with one caveat. There was no need to kill someone just because he felt bored. He waved his wings, hinting at understanding, and promised to return soon. The boy plunged into the deep end of the river. When he came up, he gasped for air. He climbed a rock. When he got to the top, he leaned against the rock, realizing how tired he was. He was tired as hell, covered in the blood of his enemies after a fierce battle. Addressing the devil, he said, "Curse this life and this torment." He asked his demonic sword if she had survived. Karen dryly asked him not to speak to her again, but in her mind she was already intent on stopping his persistence once and for all. The man replied that there was no need to pretend to be someone special, and assured her that they would wash up when they returned. Karen asked, "Oh, so you intend to come back?" She realized that he needed to look around because he was in a demonic dimension. The guy reassured him, assuring him that there was no way he would encounter a demon. At that moment, the demon arrived at the scene saying, "Just as I thought, there is really something interesting here." The hero was shocked and listened to the voice with bated breath. This voice filled his thoughts so much that it never left his mind. He returned, realizing that he would never be able to forget that voice. A demon stood on the edge of the cliff, spreading his powerful wings and addressing the man. Before him stood Valkyrian, the king of the demons. Everyone who saw him said that he was the personification of evil. It was then that he appeared in front of the boy, behind whom lay a pile of dead knights. The boy took a fighting stance and exclaimed in surprise, "What the hell? Why now?" The Valkyrie had only asked the boy a question, with no intention of fighting him. So why didn't he just answer, he wondered. He focused his demonic anger on him. He begins to realize that the guy intends to fight. At one point, the enemy, using his teleportation abilities, moves behind the boy's back. The boy is frightened and responds to this maneuver. He swung in a circular motion around himself, but did not even hit the demon. The demon suddenly laughed at him. He can't stop because he knows about the incredible potential you have and also because he dared to cut his hair. In a moment of silence, Karen asked the boy if this was the time to ask, but who was the other guy? He replied that he was the king of demons. Karen, overcome with shock, asks how they plan to defeat the demon king. The boy realizes that there is no way to escape, but he does not give up and tries to break free. Realizing the futility of his escape attempt, his hands trembled in front of Valkyrian's face. Valkyrian turned to the boy and spoke soothingly. He scratched his neck and reassured him, assuring him that he had no intention of hitting the child and advised him to relax. He solemnly settled down on the ground and stated that he did not intend to do anything. Throughout the conversation, he intended to just lie there quietly, assuring them that he may not be perfect, but he was not going to get into a conflict with the children. The guy felt uncomfortable, wondering why he was lying down. But the Alcarian kept asking if he was a man. The guy replied that the Alcarian was also interested in this and asked how he got here. The boy replied that he had been carried away by the current, to which the Alcarion said that he was in the demonic dimension for the first time. The boy was embarrassed when his interlocutor said with an emphasis on the word come that he had a strange energy. When asked who he was, the young man said that he was an ordinary person. However, the Demon King doubts the words of an ordinary man, because Valkyrian noticed that he knew his identity. But the boy said that they had never met. The Demon King replied, "I have never seen a human being, so how could I possibly know your appearance?" For the sake of argument, the boy asked the man who he was, even though he intuitively knew that this was the safe king he had heard about. The Demon King replied that he had felt a strange aura while on patrol. As a Demon King, he was obliged to take care of his domain. The boy was surprised to ask him if he was not the Demon King, because he had not seen the king inspecting his domain. The Demon King pointed at him and asked, "Why are you not impressed? I am the king of demons myself." If things continue to go on like this in his simple life, a demonic invasion will soon begin, even though he doesn't look like the kind of person who would pull off something like that. If this is indeed his true calling. The guy is worried about the reasons that prompted him to change, and he asked if he was really a demon king and what he was trying to achieve. Vicarian, a strong and persistent young man, boldly asks the Demon King himself, smiling. "Of course, I want people to live well and always have food," the demon replies. If anyone stands in his way, he threatens to kill them. The news of the demon, or rather the Demon King, disturbed the boy greatly. He plunges into memories, realizing that the resistance lasted only a moment, and he was not mistaken in hearing everything. The terrible truth that Valkyrian was in my life makes me think that since everything is fine now, some incident must soon occur that will trigger the beginning of the invasion. And the guy realizes that this needs to be rethought. The guy offers a deal to the Demon King. He warns that something will happen soon that will put your people in danger. Alcarian did not understand what he was talking about. He replied that he could not predict the exact events, but that he was expecting an incident that would provoke a great war between humans and demons. The demon lord folded his arms and asked if he was going to attack their land. Yes, that's right, the young man replied, wanting to make a deal. The boy begs him to promise that he will never start a war. The demon king, however, realizes that the boy is talking nonsense and promises him not to start a war. What can the boy offer in return? Our hero answers that he will help. He will do his best to help him, regardless of the circumstances. The demonic monarch is seriously suspicious of the young man. He stares at him with a demonic pupil, realizing that he is hiding something. The boy tries to withstand his gaze with dignity. In the alcove, he laughingly asks, "What's his name?" Our main character answers that his name is Cyan Vert. The demon assured him of his good intentions, promising that as a ruler of the demonic dimension, he would not attack their lands under any circumstances. At that moment, he flapped his wings. As he approached, he informed him that he would not include too many detailed provisions in the agreement, because the agreement had already been reached. The boy looks at him carefully and realizes all the consequences of his promise. The demon made a deal with him. After a successful deal with the demon king, the knights noticed the boy. They were surprised to find him unharmed. It seemed like a miracle. The scouts discovered him while on patrol. Our hero was nicknamed the guy who survived the demon dragon. After that, they returned to the farmstead on the border, which temporarily served as a military hospital. Our hero wakes up in the hospital. The girl turned to the Empress, asking for permission to repeat her words, noting that they had already clarified the matter. Slightly embarrassed, the girl uttered the phrase, "He would become her companion, her husband, and definitely her support." The guy blushed, realizing the situation. The Empress felt uncomfortable, but she still dared to tell him. She points at herself and says that Cyan will be hers. The man looks at her wide-eyed and says, "I don't want it." It was unusual for her to hear someone refuse the Empress, but she realizes that Cyans are like everyone else thinks they are. Yet she is only the 5th princess without any power. A man lies in bed. He's having a hard time. He looks at her and realizes that she is starting to annoy him. He knows very well that Princess Erin is a weakling of the imperial family. However, our hero cannot leave the thoughts of the moment that in her collapse of the coming life is the culprit of the plate. He decides to take another course of action and tells the princess that she is absolutely right, and that she is now completely incapable of giving anything in return. Since she has nothing at all, this information hit her right in the head and she got angry. But the guy started to justify himself, saying, "I mean, what's that? He's going to have to take a big political risk." But in spite of his words, he says he will take responsibility and he will take care of her until she gets the results she needs. She doesn't immediately realize what betrayal understands. "You're going to court me." But the guy stresses that it's just a promise, so don't get upset. But her shoulders don't melt, and she explains that she understands what he means, that she has to get better, and then he'll acknowledge her. That wasn't exactly what he meant. She pointed her finger at him, and she said, "Wait, I don't know when it's going to happen, but you're definitely going to recognize me." The guy is incredulous at how quickly she's getting ready. As she's about to leave, she decides to say one last thing. She blasphemes him for staying alive, but the guy didn't understand her gag until the end. We move to a place somewhere behind the camp in the woods on the outskirts. A man in a fur coat leaves footprints on the snowy surface. He holds up some triangular object that looks like a box and says, he smiles, looks at this object that glows with a magical radiance, and comforts himself that he still has a little more to go. Suddenly you hear the sound of a voice behind him that will kill him. Someone behind him says, "Reynold Crimson." "So it was you." And at that moment he stops moving. He can't move. He's like, it's the pyjamas hiding it. Cyan comes up behind him and tells him a small space box, considering the year. Apparently they haven't started selling them yet. An artifact that resembles boxes that have spatial mana amplification and you can put anything in there. This masterpiece seems to have been created by the Magic Council of the Goram Kingdom. Cyan tells him that he's been watching him all this year, because it would be obvious that someone in the Empire is smuggling. He magically envelops him, takes the space on the box from him and says, "That's it. This is how you've been doing it." He contacts the Magic Knight of the Mountain Kingdom, Reynold Crimson. But since the knight was hiding himself, he couldn't understand how this guy knew so much information about him. Our hero holds up this artifact and says, "My name is Cyan Vert." He, in front of this person, starts shaking out this spatial box, from which a pile of artifacts pile up, with occasional demonic beast bodies. To which the guy makes the assertion that after siphoning blood from the bodies of demonic beasts you smuggled across the border using this cube, and that you should probably have information among the suppliers. But he's yelling at him. "What are you talking about? I don't know anything about this." Cyan replies, Don't lie to me. The blood of these monsters is already being sold on the black market within the Empire. He recalls the moment when his maid also brought the blood of the Hellhound, most because of his services. He shakes with fear and asks who leaked you the information. And since the man can't just let him go, he ponders looking at him. At this point, Cyan looks at the objects and thinks how eating it all would be hard. The man decides he needs to be killed. He doesn't know how he tied him up, but a bit of the spell is loosened, and he decides to attack. He activates his mana overlay pectogram and activates fire breath, screaming at him to die. Cyan looks on at this spectacle. But the man does not stop for your carelessness. You fall under the bosom of death. Fire breath occupies the entire space, and smoke disperses and burns everything in its path. After that fiery blow, this man thinks, man, I almost died, so the rumors about the talented youngest son of the Were family weren't lying after all. After the fire began to dissipate, the man was still sitting in the snow. He relaxed a little because he had lost the spatial box a little more. He didn't expect to be caught just selling it. And then suddenly a black energy began to envelop him. And suddenly his hand is cut off, which bleeds, and the man at that moment realizes in horror that it is his hand that has been cut off. How? He takes it all in and looks and says what the black smoke enveloped his fire. But Cyan didn't care about that blow. When the fire flickered, the man saw him. No sooner had he said a word than Sessions had you by the throat. He pinned him to a tree and said, now choose. You either give it all up or die quietly. The demonic guy's face expressed deep concern. There was also a third option of the demonic guy, was he would make the man suffer and then send him to hell. The story moves us to the western edge of the trading post. Cyan decided to make a joke of it, and market life was actively going on in the market streets. The black market was doing well, and one of the merchants noticed that this time there were 2 boxes. The other consoled him, saying he thought we could hold out for another one, thinking it's an elixir. He opens that box and wants to count how many points there are, but what they saw in that box shocked them. In that box was Sir Reynolds' head, shrouded in dark smoke, but who could do such a thing? Our hero watched it from the mountain and watched their reaction. His demon sword Karen asks if you just want to let them go, but Cyan says it's just a warning. Knight Mage of the 7th rank Renel, he was siphoning blood from the corpses of demonic doors without the knowledge of the Empire of the Ears, and he was taking it all to the Magical Council of the Kingdom of Mountains. The Magic Council of the Kingdom of Gorum is a city in which magic-obsessed people gather to study the very basis of the structure of magic in order to create a new one, thus trying to reach the limit of humanity. But so far, they only make small artifacts like spatial boxes. But with the help of demon blood, they will be and will become in the future the cause of a lot of our problems, and we need to stop them before it's too late. But Care does not mock him, says, can you give up the profession of assassin, just solve other people's problems, to which Cyan replies, shut your mouth. But Kara was puzzled by the fact. Why does he look like he's living for the sake of others if he's decided to dedicate this life to himself? To which the guy replies, I just don't want others to use a whole lot of demon blood. We're moving to some place in the Ushif Empire. In the room, we see his older brother has some kind of note for him. He reads it, and it says his brother went to the front with his father. Next to him in the bed lay a beautifully beautiful girl who covered her body with a sheet. She says, you're about your brother. To which he replies yes, to which he makes him anxious. And it seems he will have to face him, for he gives him no rest. The story continues from the moment the trunk of belongings closed, and the maid happily exclaims that at last the hellish life at the front is over. She was so glad Cyan was going to the academy, and that he would definitely be better off than at the front, but he had a different opinion. He thought he seemed to be swapping one hell for another, because the academy is not what Emily thought it was. It's just a stage for all sorts of political ploys, and there's jealousy in the air there, and learning is not the first priority. Emily didn't stop to be happy for her mentee. She was rubbing the boy's face with her thoughts that the instructors at the academy were very good, and she couldn't wait to see how she would meet those instructors. She hopes that if she dates one of the instructors she will find love, but the guy remarks that she either wants to go to the academy with him, or that yes, who will take her. Why does the unassembled guy go down the carriage stairs? He's walking around the academy neighborhood and sees someone heading towards him, and then he notices his longtime acquaintance, his brother, who upon seeing him, trembling with fear, he only wanted to say hello to him, but he quickly ran away from him because he was scared to death of him. Karen couldn't resist asking who the idiot is. The guy says it's a crane with my stepbrother. You don't have to worry about him. Karen suggests that he has a strained relationship in his family, but the guy denies it, though he certainly agrees that he has a friend. As soon as he opened the door of the academy, servants bent down beside the red carpet for him to greet young Master Cyan. He realizes that they hadn't even looked in his direction before, and now they're even meeting him. whether it's his father coming here or his blue-tack brother. As he opens his room, he realizes that there have been a lot of changes over the year, and it's not for nothing that he's worked so hard. Turning the doorknob, he began to feel a terrible energy. He lights up with a sense of vengeance and realizes that he knows this energy and there can be no mistake. He opens the door knowing who it is. He knows that behind that door is undoubtedly him. And so he's met by his brother, who says it's been a long time since they've seen each other, smiling at him. The guy barely calmed himself down because he was dying to get even with him and had a lot of hatred for him. Brother asks, "You don't remember me?" "Well, I guess it's not surprising since the last time I saw you was when I was on my way to the academy." He looks at him. His eyes light up. Cyan can't contain himself. He wants to kill him. A demonic feeling envelops him and he pulls out his demonic sword and wants to kill him. But suddenly his arm is wrapped around some woman who stops him. That was Karen. She says if you kill him, you're gonna get your skull bashed in. Get it together. There's no profit in killing him now. Cyan's eyes began to fade. He closed them and decided to calm down. Instead of killing his brother, he bowed to him and said, "I am the youngest son of the Vert family. I greet my elder brother. My brother thinks that's how you remember me." Something I'm not answering. How can I not remember you, my brother? His brother puts his hand on his head and says he's glad. Honestly, he was even afraid that he had already forgotten him. He steps aside from him and says, "I've heard about your fencing skills, that they've grown a lot this year. You'll be a pillar of strength for the Worth family someday. But no, you're even better. You'll be my support on the battlefield," his brother says. "But our hero knows his lying rose and says, so I can't wait for this one." Hearing his answer, his brother suspected something, and he sees that he's kind of weird. "What a relief, because I only came to meet you," his brother says. Cyan calms himself down and realizes that he's not the type of person to pay attention to those he's not interested in. And Raz now understood why he had come here. It was even easier. Ciano smiles and says, "I wanted to meet you too, brother." At that moment, his maid is dragging Cyan's heavy suitcases and saying what a grateful child they are. Could it really have been that hard to help them out? Dragging those suitcases to the door, she breathed a sigh of relief. She was about to yell at the young master, and she did. She says, "How will you put me alone?" But then she sees his brother, the older gentleman, which shocks her. He replies, "I hear you and the gypsy have a pretty close relationship and you seem to be very friendly indeed." She was feeling overwhelmed because she was very ashamed of her aggressive behavior. She says, of course. But as soon as he leaves, she yells at him. "And I almost had to deal with it so you could warn me." But Cyan refuses and tells Emily, "Please, you can stay away for a long time." And keep telling her no stupid questions, just walk away. At those words, Emily turned pale and realized something was wrong. Cyan quickly ran to the bathroom and started burping hard, watching him get sick, and asks his demon sword Karen why you stopped me but doesn't answer. "You can thank me. If it was his chance, you could have easily taken Cyan's body while I was out of control," says the guy. But she replies, "Don't get any ideas. I just want your rage to grow and get stronger. It'll taste a little better that way," she says. The guy realizes it looks like his sword. "It looks like you." Someone's coming down the hall, walks up to Brother Cyan's door. Brother Cyan says, "Come in." A servant comes to him and says, "As you said, I have learned all about the other young lady." He asks, "And where is she?" The servant answers, "She is in the north of the continent, in the land of the white elves of Prinui. You say, who would have thought she'd be among the race of the unseeing or the wands? She's very much like that. And if she ever plans to return to the Empire, report to me immediately," he says. "I hear you, but there was something else good that happened." A brother doesn't ask why all of a sudden. "Because you look so much brighter than usual. You are so pleased to see your brother." To which he replies he laughs and says, "It must be possible to interpret it in this way too." He turns to him, his eyes glowing with a blue aura, and says, "That's not really true. I'm in a really bad mood right now." Prasuga notices that things are pretty scary and says, "I'm sorry, I didn't see the obvious." His brother noticed that his eyes were his brother Xian's eyes. It was as if he had met the enemy, or he had misunderstood everything after all. He is still very unclear and will need to be studied in detail, to which his servant replies, "Yes, I have already assigned a man to watch him." To which the Worth family member looked out the window and thought about his demonic vision. Those eyes of his brother Cyan's were something incredible. Not only is he hiding something from his brother, but he's very dangerous. Our story continues in one of Denmark Academy's carriage rides into some castle. Cyan's maid tells him that he has upset her very much. To which he replies, "I'm not to blame because as an escort to the academy only night you should have at least come for me earlier." Says in aggression the maid. He says goodbye and says, "Bye." To which she rudely replies, "Come in, sir, all right." He misses a little and says, So let's get away from her." She sees that he's just driving and says he's just gonna take it and drive. She is so understanding. "My little boy is gone. Don't be sad even if you get bullied, she says. Cyan hears her words and realizes she's not changing. At the time he was 8 years old and was so sick that he would periodically pass out. But to help him there were no such people. Then it was Emily who threw him on her back, and through rain and wind carried him to the doctor and asked him to help the young master. The doctor kindly opened the door and said, "Come in," and if it hadn't been for her at that moment she wouldn't have helped him, wouldn't have looked after him. He'd have died in the middle of nowhere for sure. The guy decides to say goodbye to her and yells, "Emily, behave or I'll personally kill you," and to the guy she's not just a maid. Emily waved back and yelled, "I can't hear you." But the young master, dressed in his suit, clasped his hands together and smiled. He realized that there were 6 middle-class knights anyway. A quality escort for one person is pretty good. He smiles at the whole spectacle, and realizes it's going to go to hell before I even get to the academy. A carriage with a Cyan is driving through a dense forest. The knights look back at each other. Cyan lies in the carriage and rests. The knight comes to the carriage and says, "Young master, we'll spend the night here." To which Cyan wondered where they were now. They were near the central city of Saffern, and most of all that tomorrow morning they would be there already. "Well answered. Let me know when you're camped out." To which the knight replies, "Young master." Cyan realizes the knight is lying to him, and there are no such forests near Saffern. They're not clear where they are at all, and it's obvious they're up to something. Knight says Cyan can come out, and Cyan comes out. He realizes it's an ambush but plays along, telling them the air is so fresh. But he's not going to pretend for long, and he says, "Okay." Who set it up because he saw some knights around him who were serious. There's a guy standing behind these knights. They all drop their masks and stare at him coldly. And one of them smiled. The guy thought he wasn't taken seriously or that he'd asked a question, his eyes lighting up. To another one of the knights replies, "You have no reason to know you're going to die anyway." He pulls out his sword and says, "It's a shame what happened. We do things out of our own free will." The guy watches the knights coming at him and says they will try to kill him as painlessly as possible. Just close your eyes. Just as suddenly, one of the rogue knights raises his sword Cyan and says goodbye. The guy dodges his daring blow and demolishes his cockpit, Knight's head flying into his head. He blows the bastard's head off with his demonic dagger, the other knight watching and not realizing what happened. That insolent knight's head hadn't even realized what had happened yet before it fell to the ground. But Cyan pulls out his brightly colored demon sword and says, "I asked who the fuck was behind it." In shock, the assassins look at Cyan and realize that he's not to be trifled with. But whoever organized the scheme was behind these pawns. Cyan is filled with the power of the demonic sword of dark mist, and says that the bastards of what style didn't expect such a thing. They froze and could not believe their eyes. One tried to attack him from behind. Cyan, on the other hand, was so quick to dodge and strike the bastard that the one that was chopped open was bleeding out. Cyan continued his attacks, and these lightning-fast attacks cut hands destroyed those rascals. He continued to order his aides, and struck one blow after another to every fool who managed to attack him. To solidify the result, he even hurled his sword at one of them. One of the knights stood looking at this and started crying that this was happening. How this 11-year-old kid was able to outbid high-ranked warriors. All those knights lay in his lap completely dead. Couldn't even do anything. The boy pointed his hand toward the sword he had hurled, and it very quickly returned to his hand, which left no doubt that you are no wonder you survived your encounter with the dragon. This isn't just an 11-year-old kid. This is the Messiah. And this mission, Lament this knight says, was originally predestined to fail. The guy walks up to him, and this knight falls to the ground and grunts in fear. He turns to him and says, "You tell me everything on the run." To which he replies with a shrug of his shoulders that Margaret's moon is behind it all. The guy realizes it was very simple, and the dirty killer keeps crying and begging him not to kill. So Beat the guy took pity on him, and he drove the chariot. And on the way, Sean sat in the chariot, and this kid was telling him that, as far as he knew, young Mr. Crane had asked for help from Mrs. Margaret, and we think this mission was that help. Cyan thinks to himself, "Oh, so it was Kranz after his meeting. He decided to organize an assassination attempt. Yeah, I'll teach him a lesson next time." Failure to strike is addressed to him, and he says, "Young master, what's going to happen to me now?" He bowed his head and realized that things were bad. He asks all of Cyan if he will kill him. Cyan replies, "I see that you don't really mind." To which he replies that we were the first to ask you to kill, and I have no right to ask you for forgiveness. The guy tells him, "Then drive the wagon because the living are more useful than the dead because you're pretty good at driving a wagon, then steer it." This unlucky assassin says, "Thank you, young master." Xiang says, "Let's go." Soon they arrive in the central town of Saffern, a beautiful castle lit up by the summer sun. The new chapter begins with a vase being broken with some flowers in the castle. Furious at the news that one is missing and 6 are dead, The mother of one of the king's boys reacts to the news that the southern gentleman left Seyfern 10 days ago. She covers her mouth in horror and says, "You said there would be no problems. How could this happen?" To which the servant replies, "We have underestimated the young master." She is horrified to realize that you have failed to dispose of some child. To which he replies that it pops up later. "So I think someone is covering. If you give us another chance, I'll send someone to the academy." She says that's enough. If we fail again, he could hurt her son. And she recalls his words with horror. "I'm sure you want your son to end up with all his limbs, right?" She clenched her teeth and said, "Do nothing more." The servant understood her task, but she also reminds us that no one can know about it. Kill anyone who knows about it. The servant closes the door. We realized her assignment, but it was overheard by Cyan's brother's agent. Moving on to our hero, who is riding in a chariot and realizes that he left 10 days ago. And the knight who wanted to kill him is now actively helping him. The guy realizes that he thinks he doesn't know he's still alive, and it looks like he'll make it to the academy, no problem. It's unclear, of course, what he's going to do about Brian. But one way or another, he's helping him. And that's not a bad thing. He woke him up and told him they were here. The guy opens his eyes and looks at this city, and he's brought back these memories. He can't say they're good, but the academy has definitely changed him a lot. He goes to the examination board and shows them that he is the son of the Duke of the Worth family. The commission is thrilled with this news. And he says, "Yes, of course we've registered you. Come to the dorm and wait a bit. In 2 days you'll have an entrance ceremony for the elementary test." To which the guy responded, "I heard you right." They give him an envelope with a key that shows there is a diamond in it. He chokes up and asks me if I got you right. You didn't get it wrong. Moving to the room that had been prepared for them in the dormitory, he drops off his belongings that his new servant had brought with him. He opens his mouth wide because he realizes this is a city. Not just the usual socializing of a huge royal chamber. No one from his family has ever been put into the royal chambers. There is definitely someone behind it. The guy looks at his new servant and says, "That's all the luggage," to which the knight replies, "Yes, that's all you had." He puts his hand in his pocket and says, "I got to the academy. The luggage is already in the room, really." Which means your job is done. Your role is coming to an end. Brian is scared. He realizes the guy wants to kill him and asks him to stop. But Cyanky gives him a bag of gold in his hands. You didn't realize what it was. But the guy says it's for your work. It should be enough for you to start a new life. In Isles, you could be killed. So you have to come here. But I'm not stopping you, of course. Goodbye. Brian doesn't know what to say to the guy. He's silent for a long time, and then falls to his knees and says, "I am Brian Kendrick, Knight of Velis. I ask permission to serve you for the rest of my life." "Boy, are you really a knight? I thought you were a coachman, but you're a knight." He says, "I have a low rank, so I was a coachman on the mission. My father always told him that if I met a truly worthy man, I should go into his service." But the guy replies that it's pretty stupid. Says, "Why you say that?" The guy rises above him, his eyes glowing. He says, "How do you know I won't stab you in the back in the future?" To which the knight replies, "So if it's so, never mind." The guy puts his hand on his shoulder and says, "Don't even think about crushing me." He walks into his chamber and says, "I don't want to go to the test." He has accepted the knight's offer. Brian is thrilled to have such a ceremony. Moving on to the Royal Academy, Dean's office, the Dean reacts to the new thought that they have quite a few talented applicants this year. He looks out over this landscape of students who have spread out in his academy. And one of the prebods moves into the office of the one blessed with the white glow. It was Aaron Severus, who elegantly appeared in the room. Next it was Set Shaharkin. All these instructors wielded their powers. The principal looked at them all and realized, "Oh, those kids are amazing." But there was another one who was a Cyan Vert. His main element was darkness, and his level was with. Even Lisa Ward, who is referred to as a godchild, didn't have everything with the element of water after graduation. Interestingly, even a child of all-round talents cannot match his younger brother. Such a judgment comes from the Dean of the Royal Academy, Kendall Kizel. Well, anyway, the instructor replies that his element is darkness. Perhaps they are assuming his talent is quite dark. Still don't look at his form and realize that they've heard that Cyan Worth has taken up residence in the royal chamber. And to which they reply that yes, she was also told that it was the instructor. And that was an order from the emperor himself. To which the director replies that it seems Cyan Vert saved the princess from the monsters at the front, and that there has been talk of their marriage. The fifth princess, who she considers a failure, will marry the son of the tatatavtovlvt of the Vert family. He asks the instructor what she thinks this could lead to. She replies there will be reprisals on the inheritance front, which could split the empire and lead to civil war. The director replies, "Yeah, we're not making it up, we're just spectators anyway. We'll wonder for ourselves if this kid will become a hero of the empire, or lead it to the bill." Walking down the corridor of the academy, Cyan realizes that in his past life he had about 80% darkness, and now he has 92. He assumes it's because of the prominent demon blood as here he meets his brother, who looks at him in horror and gets scared, at which Xiang realizes that it must be scary to see a dead person. Tough guy answers, "Oh, so you're the guy who's using him as a slave?" The guy answers, "Yes, it's Seth." Fatty was the son of the Marquis of Penairan. Papa Penairan was his name. He smiles and says, "I hear you don't even know who your mother is." The guy recalls being bullied in a past life. His demonic eyes fill with hatred. He rejoices because he was so fortunate to meet them. He's standing there waiting for them to do something when the fat one comes out and says, "Stand back, we need to give him a good smack." The guy wanted to stop his friend, but he wanted to postivatizia with Cyan. Just as the fat one approached him, Cyan knocked him out with his foot, so that when the fat one hit the floor, he crushed him with his body. His friend shouts, "No, not again."